Thanks for joining. Find your most relaxing position, take a slow breath in, and let's begin our very quiet stroll through history. If you're enjoying these sleep stories, feel free to give us a like or subscribe, but no pressure at all. Now, let's start our journey. So, you're living in a time when your best bet for a medical emergency is a guy with a straight razor and a red and white pole swinging outside his shop. Welcome to the Middle Ages, where healthcare is a fascinating mess of superstition, guesswork, and a touch of bravado. It's the era when the theory of humorism holds sway over minds and bodies alike. Your body's got 4 humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. And keeping them balanced is the key to good health. Simple, right? Well, not quite. Let's talk about bloodletting, the medieval answer to almost any health issue. Got a fever? Bloodletting. Headache? Bloodletting. Stubbed your toe? You guessed it, bloodletting. Physicians back then believed that too much blood could throw your humours out of whack, and the solution was to drain some of it away. The kicker? They thought it actually worked. This wasn't just any old quackery, it was backed by some of the greatest minds of the time. Galen, a Greek physician whose influence stretched over a millennium, was a big fan. He'd be the guest star on any medieval medical drama, telling you to roll up your sleeve for a leech. Now, these weren't just any ordinary bloodsuckers. Leeches were the rock stars of medieval medicine. They were considered so effective that they became a standard toolkit for physicians. That's right, you have a jar of these little guys ready to go at a moment's notice. The idea was that they could suck out the excess blood and restore balance to your humours. If you're cringing at the thought, remember that this was cutting-edge stuff, literally. And it wasn't cheap. A leech treatment could set you back a hefty sum if you were unlucky enough to need it frequently. But why stop at leeches? The medieval medics also had lancets, small surgical knives used to make incisions. These weren't exactly precision instruments. You're basically handing your arm over to someone with a sharp object and hoping for the best. The barber surgeons were the ones typically wielding these tools. Yep, the guys who cut your hair and trimmed your beard also dabbled in surgery. Think of it as a medieval 2-for-1 deal. Why? Because hiring a separate doctor was a luxury most couldn't afford. Barbers already had the blades after all. This dual role made a twisted kind of sense in the cash-strapped Middle Ages. Cities didn't have the resources to support large numbers of specialized medical professionals, so versatility was key. Barbershops evolved into makeshift clinics. Imagine getting your hair cut, and then, while you're there, having that pesky abscess drained. It's not a perfect arrangement, but it's practical in a world where pragmatism trumps precision. And while we're on the subject of economics, let's talk about the cost of being ill. Medieval society wasn't exactly rolling in cash. Most people lived on the edge of poverty, and paying for medical treatment was a significant burden. Physicians were expensive, and their remedies often involved costly ingredients and exotic substances. So, the barber-surgeon model wasn't just convenient, it was a necessity. All this sounds like a bit of a horror show, right? But here's the thing, medieval folks didn't think of it that way. They were working with the best knowledge they had, and for them, the logic was sound. It's easy to snicker at their methods now, but remember, this was a time when life expectancy hovered around 30 to 40 years. Desperate times called for desperate measures. As strange as it sounds, this system had its moments of brilliance. The medieval world was also one of progress, albeit at a snail's pace. While bloodletting might seem barbaric, it paved the way for more modern understandings of circulation and surgery. Every leech and lancet was a step towards the future, even if it wasn't always a successful one. So, next time you're at the barber shop, enjoying a nice relaxing haircut, spare a thought for your medieval counterpart. They'd be sitting in the same chair, possibly passing out from blood loss rather than boredom. It's a wild ride through history, where the line between barber and surgeon was as blurry as the vision of someone who just lost a pint of blood. And speaking of wild rides through history, let's fasten our seatbelts and catapult ourselves into the Renaissance. This was a time when art, science, and some truly questionable medical practices were on their greatest hits tour. Enter mercury, yes, that slippery, silvery substance you wouldn't want anywhere near your open wounds, became the go-to treatment for syphilis. Talk about a cure worse than the disease, right? Now, syphilis wasn't just any old ailment. It was the boogeyman of the Renaissance, appearing as if out of nowhere and wreaking havoc across Europe. With no antibiotics in sight, those were still centuries away, physicians turned to Mercury as their knight in shining armor. The theory? Mercury could purge the body of the disease. The reality? It was more likely to purge you of your sanity or, your life. Ever heard the phrase, "A night with Venus, a lifetime with Mercury"? It's not the newest pop song, but rather a grim reminder of the consequences of contracting syphilis and undergoing mercury treatment. Patients were subjected to mercury in all its glorious forms, ointments, vapor baths, and even, brace yourself, oral ingestion. Just imagine, as you're rubbing mercury on your skin or sitting in a vapor bath, you're simultaneously destroying your nervous system. Fun times, huh? In terms of economic context, let's talk about the cost of this toxic wonder. Getting your hands on mercury was no cheap affair. Back then, acquiring it meant dealing with alchemists, those mysterious figures of the Renaissance who were part mad scientists, part early chemists. These guys were the ones who claimed they could turn lead into gold, but more often they just turned your health into a gamble. Alchemy was a lucrative business, and the price of mercury treatments reflected that. Only the wealthy could afford to subject themselves to such dubious cures, leaving poorer souls to suffer untreated. Speaking of alchemists, we can't ignore Paracelsus, the rock star of Renaissance medicine. Real name, Philippus Aureolus Theophrastus Bombastus von Hohenheim. Yep, that's one heck of a mouthful. This guy was either a genius or a lunatic, depending on who you asked. He had radical ideas that were like a breath of fresh air, or perhaps a breath of mercury vapor in the stifling world of traditional medicine. Paracelsus believed that the body was a chemical system that needed balancing, which was a revolutionary concept for his time. He challenged the ancient Greek notions of humours and instead focused on chemical remedies. While his contemporaries were busy bleeding patients dry, Paracelsus was experimenting with minerals and metals. He's often credited with laying the groundwork for modern pharmacology, though his methods were, shall we say, a tad unorthodox. Imagine a man strutting around Europe in the early 1500s, proclaiming that traditional medicine was bunk and that he could cure anything with his concoctions. Paracelsus was known for burning the works of Galen and Avicenna, declaring them outdated. To some he was a visionary, to others a charlatan. He even coined the phrase, "the dose makes the poison," a principle that's still fundamental in toxicology today. So, what was he? A mad scientist before it was cool, or a medical savant ahead of his time? Despite the risks, the allure of mercury was undeniable. It was the cutting edge of Renaissance medicine, promising cures where none seemed possible. People were willing to risk mercury poisoning for a chance at relief from syphilis, a testament to the desperate measures taken in desperate times. The medical practices of the era were a high-stakes game of chance, with mercury as the wild card. While we often romanticize the Renaissance as a period of enlightenment and progress, it was also a time of trial and error. For every step forward in art and science, there was a corresponding stumble in medicine. Mercury treatments were just one of the many missteps on the road to modern medicine. They showed us the lengths to which people would go in the pursuit of healing, even if it meant flirting with death itself. As we continue to unravel the curious history of medicine, remember that each bizarre treatment, from bloodletting to mercury, was a stepping stone to the advanced medical knowledge we have today. It's easy to scoff at the past, but these strange practices were the pioneers of progress. And who knows, maybe in a few centuries, people will look back at some of our modern treatments and shake their heads in disbelief. In our next leg of this medical history tour, we'll delve into more of these peculiar remedies and the characters who championed them. But for now, let's leave the mercury behind, preferably in a sealed container, and look forward to the next twist in our journey through history's medical marvels. Now, as we wave goodbye to the mercury-laden Renaissance, careful not to inhale any lingering fumes, we find ourselves in the Victorian era, where the air is thick with progress and propriety and, oddly enough, the scent of arsenic and cocaine. Yes, welcome to the 19th century, where your friendly neighbourhood apothecary could hook you up with a pick-me-up that packs quite the punch. It's the gilded age of industry and empire, where the pursuit of health sometimes took a sharp turn into the downright dangerous. First up, let's talk arsenic. This wasn't just your average household poison, it was practically a Victorian celebrity. Arsenic was the go-to substance for everything from rat poison to beauty creams. Yep, you heard that right, beauty creams. In a society obsessed with pallor, arsenic offered a ghostly complexion that was all the rage. The catch? It's toxic. But hey, fashion has its risks, right? Women dabbed it on like it was the 19th century equivalent of sunscreen, blissfully unaware they were applying a toxin that was as lethal as it was luxurious. The romance of the Victorian era, with its lace and lamplight, often obscures the harsh reality of these beauty standards. The quest for the perfect visage led people to take some misguided advice, like, a little poison goes a long way. The irony? Arsenic was also used medicinally, prescribed for conditions like asthma and syphilis. Yes, the same stuff that could kill you was also supposed to cure you. The logic? Arsenic was believed to have a tonic effect in small doses, a belief that turned out to be as shaky as a Victorian parlour table. Let's not forget the economic aspect. The Victorian era was a time of stark contrasts. While the upper classes could afford genuine medical advice, the working poor often relied on patent medicines, which were essentially cocktails of dubious ingredients sold under the guise of health. These elixirs promised vitality, relief from pain, and sometimes even happiness. What they delivered, more often than not, was addiction, or worse. It was a time when quackery wore a respectable suit and had a storefront on every corner. Now, if arsenic was the darling of Victorian beauty products, cocaine was the party crasher at the medicinal buffet. Cocaine found its way into everything from toothache drops to the original recipe of a certain iconic soda. That's right, in the late 1800s, you could sip your way to euphoria with a cold glass of Coca-Cola, back when its secret ingredient wasn't just a marketing ploy, but an actual stimulant derived from coca leaves. The appeal of cocaine was its ability to provide a quick burst of energy, a boon in an era of industrialization where everyone was hustling to keep up. It was the Red Bull of its day, offering a shortcut to productivity. Even Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, was known to indulge, extolling cocaine's virtues in treating depression and anxiety. It's as if the entire era was running on a collective sugar high with a cocaine chaser. But the honeymoon didn't last. By the turn of the century, the dark side of cocaine was becoming painfully clear. Addiction rates soared, and the societal costs were impossible to ignore. Yet, the Victorian age was nothing if not resilient in its optimism. Laws slowly caught up with science, and by the early 20th century, the government began regulating these substances. The romance of the quick fix gave way to a more sober understanding of the consequences. So, why did these substances thrive in the Victorian era? The answer lies in the intersection of science, society, and a touch of naivete. The Industrial Revolution had sparked a belief in progress, a conviction that science could solve anything. With new technologies emerging, people trusted that these chemical wonders were just another step toward a brighter future. In a way, it was an age of innocence. The side effects of these substances weren't fully understood, and the dangers were often dismissed in the name of advancement. Moreover, the social norms of the time played a crucial role. The Victorian era was marked by strict decorum and a stiff upper lip where expressing personal problems was often frowned upon. Substances like arsenic and cocaine offered a discreet way to cope with the pressures of the day. They were the silent companions in a world that prized appearances over emotional transparency. Let's not sugarcoat it. The darker side of these substances was a ticking time bomb. Accidental poisonings were tragically common. Arsenic's pervasive presence in household items meant that a slip in dosage could be fatal, and cocaine addiction was a spectre that haunted many, its alluring promise of energy and relief giving way to dependency and despair. As we peel back the layers of this era, we see that the Victorian age, for all its grandeur and elegance, was also a time of contradictions. The romanticized image of a genteel society belies the harsh reality of its medical missteps. It's a reminder that every era has its blind spots, where the pursuit of progress sometimes leads down perilous paths. The Victorian flirtation with drugs and poisons wasn't just a historical footnote, it was a reflection of the human condition, a testament to our eternal quest for solutions even when they come at a cost. As we continue our journey through the annals of medical history, there's plenty more to explore, from bizarre treatments to the characters who championed them. But let's leave that for next time. For now, ponder the curious legacy of arsenic and cocaine, where fashion met folly and medicine mingled with madness. And just as we're leaving the Victorian era and its toxic allure behind, we step into the bright new dawn of the 20th century. The world is buzzing with excitement over new inventions, from Ford's Model T to the Wright brothers' flying machines. But hold on to your hats, because amidst all this progress, there's a medical marvel, or monstrosity, depending on your perspective, waiting in the wings, the lobotomy. Yes, folks, we're diving into the era when sticking an ice pick into someone's brain was considered cutting-edge mental health care. Now, let's get one thing straight. The early 20th century wasn't exactly teeming with effective mental health treatments. Psychiatry was more of a guessing game than a science, and institutions for the mentally ill were bursting at the seams. Enter the lobotomy, hailed as the miracle cure for everything from depression to schizophrenia. It was the iPhone of its time. Everyone wanted one, and it promised to solve all your problems with just a few tweaks. But unlike your smartphone, a lobotomy came with permanent consequences. The man behind this breakthrough? Meet Antonio Egas Moniz, a Portuguese neurologist who, in 1935, devised a method he called leucotomy. By severing nerve fibers in the brain's prefrontal lobe, Moniz believed he could alter a patient's behavior. His results were mixed, to say the least, but that didn't stop him from being awarded the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 1949. Yep, a Nobel Prize for a procedure that essentially turned people into shadows of their former selves. Talk about a controversial accolade. But Moniz wasn't the only player in this game of cerebral roulette. Enter Walter Freeman, an American physician who took Moniz's idea and ran with it straight into infamy. Freeman, never one to shy away from the spotlight, popularized the transorbital lobotomy, a procedure that involved inserting an ice pick-like instrument through the patient's eye socket to reach the brain. Sounds like a scene from a horror movie, right? Well, in the mid-20th century, it was considered progressive medicine. Freeman wasn't just a doctor, he was a showman. He toured the United States in what he called his lobotomobile, performing thousands of lobotomies in hospitals, asylums, and even state fairs. By the time he was done, he performed nearly 3,500 of these procedures, often with just a local anesthetic and a few taps of a hammer. It was a production line of brain surgery, and the results were as varied as the patients themselves. Some experienced relief from their symptoms, but most were left incapacitated, their personalities forever altered. Now, you might be wondering why anyone thought this was a good idea. Well, let's dive into the political and economic soup of the time. The Great Depression and World War II had left the United States with a mental health crisis. Institutions were overcrowded and resources were scarce. Lobotomies were seen as a cost-effective solution. Instead of lengthy stays in mental hospitals, a quick procedure could, in theory, send patients back into society. It was a triumph of efficiency over empathy, a chilling reminder of how economic pressures can shape medical ethics. But it wasn't just economics driving the lobotomy craze. There was also a cultural undercurrent that revered science as the ultimate problem solver. The post-war era was a time of innovation and discovery, and the promise of a scientific fix for mental illness was tantalizing. It didn't hurt that lobotomies had the backing of influential figures. Freeman himself was an adept self-promoter, and his charisma helped sell the procedure to a public eager for solutions. Of course, not everyone was on board. Critics of lobotomy pointed out the glaring ethical issues, not to mention the lack of rigorous scientific evidence supporting its efficacy. But in an age when mental illness was stigmatized and poorly understood, dissenting voices were often drowned out by the clamor for a quick fix. It was a classic case of, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is, but the allure of a cure-all was simply too strong to resist. As we look back at the lobotomy era, it's easy to shake our heads at the sheer audacity of it all. But remember, hindsight is 20/20. At the time, the procedure was seen as a beacon of hope in a field that was groping in the dark. It's a sobering reminder of how desperation can cloud judgment and how the quest for progress can sometimes lead us astray. The story of lobotomy is one of hubris and heartbreak, of a society willing to gamble with its most vulnerable members in the name of advancement. It raises uncomfortable questions about the ethics of medical experimentation and the limits of human knowledge. And while the procedure has long been discredited, its legacy lingers as a cautionary tale of the dangers of unchecked scientific ambition. As we wrap up this chapter in our medical misadventures, keep in mind that the twists and turns of history are never straightforward. The path to progress is littered with missteps and miscalculations, each one a testament to humanity's enduring desire to heal, even when the cure is worse than the disease. So, as we gear up for the next installment of our journey, let's hold on to our skepticism and our curiosity, ready to explore the fascinating, flawed, and often frightening world of medical history. As we wrap up our whirlwind tour through the wacky world of historical medicine, let's fast forward to the present, where you're less likely to find a barber with a lancet and more likely to see a doctor with a stethoscope. Medicine, like fashion, changes over time, but the stakes are a bit higher than just last season's shoes. While a lobotomy might seem like the stuff of horror flicks now, back then it was hailed as a cutting-edge breakthrough. Fast forward to today, and you'll find a different approach to the brain, one that involves MRIs and neuroplasticity rather than ice picks and guesswork. So, how did we get from leeches to lasers, from mercury to modern miracles? To unravel this, let's take a stroll through the evolution of medicine. Think of it as a greatest hits compilation, minus the chart-topping disasters. First up, the 20th century saw the rise of antibiotics, discovered by Alexander Fleming in 1928, when he noticed that a mold called Penicillium notatum had an appetite for bacteria. Penicillin was the silver bullet we didn't know we were waiting for, turning once deadly infections into mere inconveniences. By the time World War II rolled around, penicillin was mass-produced, saving countless lives and giving bacteria a run for their money. But let's not forget the economic underpinnings of this medical metamorphosis. The Industrial Revolution didn't just churn out steam engines and smog, it also laid the groundwork for pharmaceutical giants. By the mid-20th century, companies like Pfizer and Merck were household names, their labs bubbling with new compounds and possibilities. The pharmaceutical industry became a juggernaut, blending science with capitalism, for better or worse. It's a world where a single drug can cost millions in development, but can also rake in billions in profit. The stakes are high, and the competition is fierce. Speaking of fierce, the battle against heart disease ramped up in the latter half of the 20th century. Once upon a time, a heart attack was a death sentence. But thanks to medical advancements like coronary artery bypass surgery and cholesterol-lowering statins, we've managed to turn the tables. In fact, the introduction of statins in the late 1980s was a game-changer, reducing the risk of heart attacks by 1/3. And let's not forget the pacemaker. Clarence Lillehei and Earl Backen's invention in 1958 was a literal lifesaver, keeping hearts ticking and doctors beaming with pride. Now, if you thought the journey from medieval bloodletting to modern medicine was bumpy, just wait until you see the ethical roller coaster that is medical experimentation. From the Tuskegee syphilis study to the development of the polio vaccine, the road to discovery has been paved with ethical landmines. The Tuskegee study, which ran from 1932 to 1972, left a particularly dark stain on the annals of medical history. For 40 years, African American men were left untreated for syphilis, all in the name of research. It's a chilling reminder that the pursuit of knowledge can sometimes overshadow basic human decency. Contrast this with the polio vaccine, developed by Jonas Salk in 1955. Salk's discovery was a beacon of hope in a world gripped by the fear of paralysis. Polio was the bogeyman of the early 20th century, but Salk's vaccine changed everything. In an era where patenting a vaccine could have made him a millionaire, Salk famously declared, "Could you patent a son?" His altruism set a standard, reminding the world that sometimes the cure is more important than the cash. As we move further into the 21st century, one can't ignore the rise of personalized medicine. Gone are the days of one-size-fits-all treatments. Today, your DNA can be decoded faster than you can say genome sequencing, tailor-making treatments just for you. It's a brave new world where your genetic blueprint can guide everything from cancer treatments to predicting potential health risks. The Human Genome Project, completed in 2003, was a landmark achievement, mapping out the very essence of what makes us human. Of course, with great power comes great responsibility and a hefty price tag. Personalized medicine is not just about cutting-edge science, it's about accessibility. The challenge lies in ensuring that these advancements don't become the exclusive domain of the wealthy. After all, what good is a cure if it's out of reach for those who need it most? Speaking of challenges, Let's not forget the ongoing battle with antibiotic resistance. A grim reminder that bacteria evolve faster than a season of your favorite binge-worthy show. The overuse and misuse of antibiotics have led to superbugs that laugh in the face of penicillin. It's a sobering reality check. Our past successes in medicine are only as good as our ability to adapt and innovate. As we reflect on this journey from absurdities to advancements, it's clear that the history of medicine is a testament to the resilience and ingenuity of the human spirit. Each bizarre treatment, from bloodletting to lobotomies, was a stepping stone to greater understanding, even if it sometimes felt like we were stepping on rakes. The lesson here? Progress is messy and hindsight is a luxury. But it's this very messiness that propels us forward, pushing the boundaries of what's possible. So, where does this leave us today? In a world where technology and medicine are more intertwined than ever, the challenge is to balance innovation with caution. The next big breakthrough could be lurking in a lab, waiting to change the world, or to remind us yet again of the fine line between genius and folly. As we continue to navigate this ever-evolving landscape, let's do so with an eye on the past and a foot firmly planted in the future. After all, the history of medicine might be full of missteps, but it's also a story of triumph, tenacity, and the unyielding quest for knowledge. And as you drift off to sleep tonight, nestled in the comfort of modern medicine, remember, every leech, every lobotomy, every stumble was part of the journey to where we are now. It's a history that's as human as it is humbling, a reminder that while we may not always get it right, we never stop trying. Here's to the next chapter in medical history. Let's hope it's a good one. A rooster's crow slices through the salty morning air as you awake in Tyre, a city as vibrant as the purple dye that made it famous. The Mediterranean whispers promises of trade and fortune just beyond your doorstep, tickling your ambition. Welcome to the 2nd millennium BC, where being a Phoenician merchant is not just a job, it's a high-stakes adventure in economic gymnastics. You're perched in Tyre, a city strategically hugging the coast like it's got a secret to keep. And it does. Secrets of trade routes, maritime prowess, and a dye so luxurious that it makes modern luxury brands look like thrift stores. Tyre isn't just any city, it's a bustling hub, a powerhouse built on the backs of those who know how to navigate its mercantile maze. Not to mention, it's an island fortress tethered by a causeway to the mainland, making it a tough nut to crack for any would-be invader with dreams of conquest. As you prepare for the day's hustle, breathing in the scent of salt and ambition, you can't help but feel a swell of pride. You're part of a civilization that transformed the Mediterranean into its personal highway. Those ships bobbing in the harbour aren't just vessels. They're the arteries of a vast network stretching from Egypt to Greece, Cyprus to Carthage. And you're the lifeblood, moving goods, culture, and currency across the blue expanse. Now, let's talk about the Tyrian purple dye, the rock star of ancient commodities. This isn't just any colour, it's a status symbol, a statement. Roman emperors would drape themselves in it so that everyone knew they were the real deal. But here's the kicker. Making this dye is as labour-intensive as trying to teach a cat to fetch. The colour comes from the mucus of the murex sea snail, which sounds about as glamorous as it is. It takes around 10,000 of these little guys to produce a single gram of the dye. That's right, 10,000. It's like the ancient world's version of a luxury tax. This isn't just about looking good, it's about broadcasting power. When you drape yourself in Tyrian purple, you're not just wearing a garment, you're wearing your bank account. This dye was worth more than its weight in gold, and that's saying something when your economy is built on the backs of snail slime. And you, my friend, are at the heart of this operation, ready to barter, haggle, and trade your way to the top of the ancient economic food chain. As you sip your morning pomegranate juice, contemplating the day ahead, you can't ignore the city's geography, a masterpiece of nature and necessity. Tyre is perfectly positioned, like a chess piece poised for a winning move. The city's dual harbours make it a sailor's paradise and a merchant's dream, allowing you to receive and dispatch goods with the kind of efficiency that would make a modern shipping magnate green with envy. Of course, it's not all smooth sailing. The bustling market you're about to dive into is a cacophony of noise, deals, and the occasional shouting match that might end with a handshake or a thrown amphora. But that's just a day in the life here. Tyre's market is where you earn your stripes, or your stripes of purple, if we're being literal. It's the beating heart of the city, a place where barter is an art form, and you're Picasso with a pocket full of ancient currency ready to make your mark. As you step out into the sun-drenched streets, you can almost hear the city vibrating with potential. Today, you'll haggle over cedar wood, glass, and, of course, that precious dye. You'll engage with traders from lands you've only heard about in stories, tales passed down by sailors who might embellish as much as they inform. But that's part of the charm, isn't it? The blend of myth and reality, fact and legend, all swirling together like the very dye you trade. So, here you are, ready to take on the day. The sea breeze carries the scent of opportunity, and you, a Phoenician merchant of Tyre, are about to seize it. Whether it's the allure of new goods, the challenge of the market, or the simple satisfaction of a day well spent, you know one thing: in this city of trade and triumph, you're exactly where you need to be. And so you find yourself swept into the bustling heart of Tyre's market, a place where the air is thick with spices and ambitions, and the chatter is as diverse as the goods on offer. This is where the magic happens, or at least where the illusion of magic is meticulously crafted by merchants like yourself. You're not just selling goods, you're spinning tales, exchanging stories, and, let's be honest, sometimes sprinkling a little exaggeration to sweeten the deal. Traders from Egypt, Greece, and places even further afield jostle for space, each vying for a piece of Tyre's economic pie. The Egyptians come bearing papyrus, confident in its allure, like they're the ancient world's answer to Silicon Valley tech giants. Meanwhile, the Greeks are here with olive oil as smooth as their rhetoric, and yes, it's as essential to them as Wi-Fi is to us today. You, however, have your eyes on cedar wood, the ancient equivalent of a Swiss bank account, a solid investment with returns that smell fantastic. Now, let's talk currency. Forget about credit cards or online transactions. You're dealing in silver shekels, the jingling heartbeats of the ancient economy. These little pieces of metal hold more power than you might think, and in a marketplace as dynamic as Tyre, knowing their value can mean the difference between a good day and a great one. Silver shekels were the Bitcoin of the Bronze Age, volatile in value but universally accepted. As you navigate the market's labyrinth, you encounter a Greek trader who, with a twinkle in his eye, offers you olive oil in exchange for your Tyrian purple. It's tempting, considering olive oil's versatility. It's as much a kitchen staple as it is a lamp fuel. But you know your worth, and so does he. The negotiation is a dance, a verbal sparring match where the real currency is your wit. Beyond the goods and currency lies the complex web of logistics that keeps this vibrant trade alive. Picture this. Navigating the Mediterranean isn't just about staying afloat. It's about mastering the art of sailing, making allies, and avoiding the kind of drama that could sink your operation faster than a poorly built trireme. Forget the myth of constant danger. Savvy navigation and strategic alliances are your real life jackets. Pirates and storms are real, sure, but they're the ancient world's tabloid fodder, a sensational story, not the everyday reality. You see, the Phoenicians aren't just merchants. They're the original networkers, building relationships that span the known world. They don't just know the best routes, they know the people who control them. This isn't just business, it's a social event, a networking opportunity where your reputation is as valuable as your cargo. And here's a little secret. It's these relationships that often protect your ships more than any sword or spear. As you stroll through the market, you can't help but feel the pulse of Tyre's economy, a living organism that thrives on the exchange of goods and ideas. This isn't just trade, it's cultural cross-pollination. You're not just swapping cedar for papyrus. You're exchanging stories, customs, languages. It's globalization before globalization was even a word. And, lest we forget, there's a darker side to this bustling scene. The myth of the noble merchant is exactly that, a myth. Behind the colourful stalls and friendly banter lies a world rife with competition, undercutting, and sometimes outright deceit. Deals fall through, partnerships sour, and not every handshake is as honest as it seems. But that's the game you're in, and you play it knowing the risks. As the sun begins to dip, casting a golden hue over the marketplace, you realize that today has been more than a series of transactions. It's a testament to Tyre's resilience and ingenuity, a city that's turned trade into an art form. You've navigated the chaos, struck deals, and perhaps even made a few friends along the way. And as you pocket your silver shekels, there's a satisfaction in knowing that you're not just surviving in this ancient world, you're thriving. So, as the market begins to wind down and traders pack up their wares, you take a moment to soak it all in. This is the heartbeat of Tyre, a place where legends are born and fortunes are made. Today, you've been more than a merchant. You've been a part of something bigger, a tapestry of commerce, culture, and human connection that stretches across time and space. You head towards the docks, where the sea awaits your next adventure. Tomorrow promises new challenges, new opportunities, and who knows, maybe a new story to tell. Until then, you walk away from the market, silver jingling in your pocket, knowing you've played your part in the grand theatre of ancient trade, where reality and legend are two sides of the same Tyrian coin. As you stroll away from the market, the salty breeze seems to whisper secrets of ancient power plays, secrets that have a way of shaping even the most mundane aspects of your life. You might think that as a Phoenician merchant, your main concern would be counting those silver shekels or haggling over a batch of cedar logs. But, oh no, my friend, there's a whole other game afoot, one where the stakes are higher than any market deal you could imagine. Welcome to the political chessboard of the 2nd millennium BC, where Tyre isn't just a city, but a pawn, a rook, and sometimes even a knight in the grand game of empires. First, let's get one thing straight. The idea of Phoenician independence is about as accurate as saying a cat is independent just because it ignores you most of the time. Sure, Tyre and its sister cities had a reputation for autonomy, but that was more about playing their cards right than any grand notion of freedom. Imagine living in a city that was a commercial powerhouse, yet constantly under the watchful eyes of bigger players like Egypt and Assyria. These regional titans were like the overbearing relatives who always have a say in your life, whether you like it or not. Take Egypt, for example. Around this time, they were a dominant force in the region, and their influence was as pervasive as the Nile flooding its banks. Egyptian pharaohs liked their tributes, and Tyre, with its purple dye and skilled sailors, was a juicy target. The Egyptians would send their emissaries, expecting a regular flow of goods. Think of it as the ancient version of a subscription service you couldn't cancel. And don't be fooled by the romanticized notion of tribute as a mere token of respect. This was more like paying the ancient mob for protection, miss a payment, and you better hope your defenses were as solid as your cedar wood. Meanwhile, the Assyrians were like that neighbor who constantly reminds you of their extensive tool collection, always ready to help you fix things, whether you asked for it or not. They were expanding their empire aggressively, and Tyre's strategic location was too tempting to ignore. The Assyrians were known for their military prowess, and their tactics were as subtle as a chariot in a pottery shop. If diplomacy didn't work, they weren't above using force, and their armies were a reminder that Tyre needed to keep its alliances as tight as a well-knotted sail. Navigating this political landscape was no walk in the agora. The rulers of Tyre had to be as shrewd as the best sailors, steering between the proverbial Scylla and Charybdis of Egyptian and Assyrian interests. They engaged in a delicate balancing act, offering just enough tribute to keep the peace without entirely surrendering their autonomy. It was a bit like juggling flaming torches while riding a unicycle. Impressive if you could pull it off, but one wrong move and you'd be toast. For merchants like you, this political tightrope walk had real implications. Sure, you could trade freely, but the taxes and levies imposed by these regional powers were as unpredictable as the Mediterranean weather. One day, you might find a lucrative market in Egypt. The next, you'd be scrambling to pay an unexpected levy from the Assyrians. The concept of a stable business environment was about as mythical as a centaur. Everyone talked about it, but no one had ever really seen it. Now, let's debunk another myth, the idea that Phoenician merchants were just savvy traders with no political savvy. In reality, you had to be a diplomat as much as a dealer. Whether you were negotiating with Egyptian officials or currying favor with Assyrian governors, your success depended on your ability to read the room, or, more accurately, the political climate. And let me tell you, those rooms were often as tense as a bowstring, with alliances shifting like sand in the desert. Even the legendary Tyrian purple wasn't immune to these political machinations. The dye might have been worth its weight in gold, but it was also a bargaining chip in diplomatic negotiations. Offering a bolt of this precious fabric to a powerful ally could be the difference between a strategic partnership and becoming the next target on a conquest list. So, While you're busy counting your profits, never forget that each transaction is part of a larger geopolitical puzzle. And just like any good puzzle, the pieces are always changing. Let's not forget the local governance in Tyre, which was as complex as a Minoan fresco. The city was ruled by a king, but this wasn't a simple monarchy. The king was more of a CEO navigating boardroom politics, with local elites and influential merchants like yourself forming a kind of ancient advisory board. The council, known as the Misharim, helped make critical decisions, and you can bet they weren't just rubber-stamping royal decrees. If you wanted to maintain your influence, you had to keep these local power players happy too. It was a balancing act within a balancing act, a political inception where layers of intrigue were stacked like amphora in a merchant's warehouse. In this world, diplomacy wasn't just a tool, it was a necessity. The Phoenicians were masters of playing both sides, maintaining a semblance of independence while keeping larger powers at bay. Some might call it cunning, others might call it survival. Either way, it was an art form that required skill, charm, and perhaps a dash of daring. As you make your way back to your shop, the sun setting over the Mediterranean, you can't help but marvel at the complexity of it all. Here you are, a mere merchant, yet your daily life is woven into a tapestry of politics, power, and perpetual negotiation. It's enough to make you appreciate the simplicity of a good barter, where the only thing you have to worry about is getting a fair price for your goods. And so, as the day winds down and the political machinations continue to churn in the background, you find solace in the knowledge that you're part of something much larger. Tyre might be a pawn in the games of empires, but within its walls, you have carved out a niche, a place where commerce and diplomacy intertwine like the colourful threads of a Phoenician tapestry. As you lay down for the night, the distant sounds of the sea lulling you to sleep, you know there's more to come. The empires will continue their dance of dominance, and Tyre will navigate the waters with the skill of its finest sailors. And you, ever the astute merchant, will be there, ready to seize the opportunities and challenges that tomorrow will undoubtedly bring. As the sun dips beneath the horizon, casting a warm glow over Tyre, you might think it's time to wind down. But oh no, my friend, the afternoon is just getting started. You see, trading might be your bread and butter, but it's the social fabric of Tyre that truly weaves your story. Let's dive into the nitty-gritty of the city's social scene, where family, community, and commerce collide in a delightful hodgepodge of ancient networking. Forget the idea of a rigid class system where everyone knows their place and stays there. That's a myth, as persistent as the notion that cats were worshipped as gods and haven't forgotten it. In Tyre, social mobility is more fluid than a Phoenician sailing vessel cutting through the Mediterranean waves. Sure, you're not going to see a shepherd become king overnight, but in the mercantile world, skill, cunning, and a smidgen of luck can propel you up the social ladder faster than you can say Murex snail. Family is the cornerstone of your operations, and not just because they keep inviting themselves over for dinner. In Tyre, businesses are often family affairs, with aunts, uncles, cousins, and in-laws all pitching in, or at least pretending to. The family unit is your first port of call when it comes to labour, investment, and maintaining those ever-crucial trade connections. It's like a LinkedIn network, but with more bickering over who gets the best slice of lamb at dinner. Community matters too. You're part of a guild, a group of merchants who band together not just for collective bargaining power, but also to share resources, intel, and the occasional shoulder to cry on when a deal goes south. These guilds are the backbone of Tyrian society, offering a support network that ensures you're never alone in the choppy seas of commerce. It's like a medieval version of a startup incubator, without the hipster coffee shops and beanbags. Now, let's bust another myth, the idea that merchants were mere pawns in the grand scheme of things. Phoenician merchants are more than just traders, they're cultural ambassadors, political influencers, and, here's the kicker, pioneers of literacy. In a world where oral tradition rules, being able to read and write is like having the keys to the kingdom. You're not just tracking inventory, you're documenting transactions, drafting contracts, and, crucially, keeping accounts. Good record-keeping is the difference between a thriving business and a shipwrecked one. Imagine this. You're jotting down numbers and names with a stylus on a clay tablet, your ancient spreadsheet. Sure, it's not as fast as typing on a laptop, but it gets the job done. Literacy gives you an edge, a superpower that allows you to transcend the role of a mere shopkeeper and step into the realm of international trade. When you can read a contract or write a letter to a foreign partner, you're not just a cog in the machine, you're the one turning the gears. Let's not forget the importance of language. In Tyre, you're likely to hear a polyglot symphony, a blend of Phoenician, Aramaic, Egyptian, and maybe even a smattering of Greek. Being multilingual isn't just a nifty party trick, it's essential for negotiating deals and avoiding misunderstandings that could cost you a shipment of precious goods. It's like being in a high-stakes poker game where the cards are words and the chips are your livelihood. Now, let's address the status of merchants in society. In Tyre, merchants are more than just middlemen, they're the linchpins of the economy. You hold sway in civic matters, often consulted by the king and local elites on matters of trade and taxation. You're part of the city's decision-making process, a testament to the vital role commerce plays in Tyrian life. When the city prospers, so do you, and vice versa. It's a symbiotic relationship, a dance where everyone benefits if the steps are in sync. But with great power comes great responsibility, and a fair share of envy. Not everyone is thrilled about your success, and jealousy can brew faster than a pot of Phoenician stew. Rival merchants might spread rumors, competitors could try to undercut your prices, and let's not even start on the occasional bureaucratic hurdle thrown your way by a disgruntled official. It's all part of the game, one where the stakes are as high as the cedar trees you trade. Yet, for all the challenges, the rewards are equally enticing. The social mobility in Tyre allows you to dream big, to envision a future where your children could rise even higher in status. Perhaps they'll even marry into a more influential family, further strengthening your position in the grand tapestry of Tyrian society. The possibilities are as vast and enticing as the Mediterranean itself. So as you reflect on the social dynamics of Tyre, remember this: you're not just a merchant, but a pivotal player in a complex societal web. Your role extends beyond buying and selling. You're shaping the cultural and economic landscape of your city. It's a heady mix of responsibility, opportunity, and a dash of drama, all wrapped up in the vibrant fabric of Phoenician life. As the evening settles in, you look forward to another day of trading, networking, and navigating the ever-evolving social scene of Tyre. There's no handbook for this kind of life. Only the instinct, savvy, and occasional daring that have served you well so far. You know that the winds of change are always blowing, and you're ready to sail wherever they might take you next. But for now, you savor the moment, content in the knowledge that you're more than just a cog in the machine. You're a craftsman of commerce, an architect of alliances, and a keeper of knowledge in this ancient world that thrives on exchange, in every sense of the word. As you sit back, reflecting on the day's hustle and Tyre's bustling social scene, it's time to consider the legacy you and your fellow Phoenician merchants are crafting. This isn't just about cedar logs and snail dye, folks. It's about the indelible mark you're leaving on the fabric of history. You see, the Phoenician legacy is a bit like that ancient wine you've been saving, rich, complex, and best appreciated over time. Let's start with the biggest feather in your cap, the alphabet. That's right, your scribbles on clay tablets have revolutionized communication. While others were busy carving hieroglyphics that looked like the world's most complicated emoji set, you guys streamlined the process. The Phoenician alphabet was the first to use characters representing sounds rather than whole words or ideas. With a modest 22 characters, it was as efficient as a well-oiled trade network and spread faster than gossip at a sailor's tavern. By the 9th century BC, even the Greeks had adopted it, giving rise to the alphabets that would eventually shape the Western world. Talk about a legacy, huh? You didn't just write history, you helped invent the tools to record it. But wait, there's more. Your maritime skills were the GPS of the ancient world. Phoenician navigation techniques were like the secret sauce that made Mediterranean trade routes sizzle. Forget the romantic notion of the lone adventurer braving the high seas with just the stars for company. Your fleets were equipped with knowledge passed down through generations, a mix of experience and innovation. You knew your way around a sextant, well, more like a primitive version of it, and could read the skies as easily as those clay tablets. And while other civilizations were still hugging the coastlines like nervous swimmers at a public pool, you were charting open waters with confidence. Your influence didn't stop at the water's edge either. As your ships touched foreign shores, they didn't just unload cargo, they unloaded culture. Whether it was the art of glassmaking, which you perfected to a point where even Cleopatra would have been impressed, or the spread of your distinctive vowel-light language, you were the original influencers. And let's not forget the architectural know-how. Your building techniques spread as far as Carthage, and your iconic style would later influence Roman engineering. Speaking of influence, your trade networks laid the foundation for the concept of a global economy. By the first millennium BC, you had trade agreements with everyone who was anyone, from the Egyptians to the Babylonians. These were not just casual exchanges, they were binding agreements that could rival a modern-day business contract. The scale of your operations was staggering, with Tyre and its sister cities acting as nodes in a vast commercial web that stretched across continents. Yet, there's a duality to this legacy. For every tale of Phoenician triumph, there's a counter-narrative that speaks to the gritty reality. Those ships that danced across the waves, they were often overcrowded, with sailors enduring conditions that would make a modern-day cruise ship feel like paradise. And while the idea of the noble trader is appealing, let's not forget the darker side. Smuggling, piracy, and the occasional political intrigue were as much a part of the Phoenician playbook as fair trade practices. Then there's the romanticized image of the Phoenician merchant as a cosmopolitan jet-setter of the ancient world. Sure, it's nice to think of yourself as a pioneer of cultural exchange, but the truth is, it was often a matter of survival. Trade wasn't just a way to get rich, it was a necessity in a world where resources were as volatile as the political alliances. It's easy to wear rose-colored glasses when looking at history, but the reality was often as salty and sharp as the sea air that filled your lungs. So, as you contemplate your place in this grand tapestry, remember that the Phoenician legacy is not a monolith. It's a kaleidoscope of achievements and challenges, victories and losses. You are both the myth and the reality, the storyteller and the story. And while you might not have known it then, the seeds you planted in the fertile soil of history would grow into the towering oaks of future civilizations. As you retire for the night, the rhythmic crash of waves against the shore a comforting lullaby. You can rest easy knowing that your life's work is woven into the very fabric of the world. You might not be around to see the full impact of your contributions, but you can dream that somewhere down the line, a scribe in a far-off land will etch your legacy into the annals of time. And that, my friend, is the true mark of a Phoenician merchant. Your eyelids flutter open in the early dawn of Hattusa, the Hittite capital that's a bit like the ancient world's Wall Street, minus the skyscrapers, plus a few more goats. The air is crisp, a perfect setting for a day in the bustling market that makes this city tick like an Anatolian heart. You're not just a spectator, you're a merchant, navigating the dizzying swirl of traders, goods, and the ever-elusive notion of profit. Welcome to the 14th century BC, where the soundscape is a symphony of haggling voices, bleating sheep, and the sweet clink of silver, the currency that keeps this whole operation in motion. Silver is the name of the game, and you're in it to win it. Think of it as ancient cash, the metallic lifeblood flowing through trade networks that connect this Anatolian powerhouse to the farthest reaches of the known world. Hattusa isn't just any city, it's the beating heart of the Hittite Empire, a place where the wheels of commerce grind constantly. You're in a market that's a melting pot, not unlike a crowded subway in rush hour, but with more papyrus and fewer smartphones. Here, traders from across the empire and beyond bring their wares, spices from the south, textiles from the east, and most importantly, tin. Tin. That metal that's as crucial to the bronze-making process as Wi-Fi is to a modern teenager. Without it, bronze is just a dream, and dreams don't forge empires. The market is a bustling hub, not just for goods but for gossip. Traders exchange more than just items, they swap stories, news, and the occasional insult. The market's energy is tangible, the kind of place where elbows are sharp and wit is sharper. Here, you're not just selling items, you're bartering for information, positioning yourself in the intricate web of social and economic networks. Hattusa's strategic location is its secret weapon. Situated in central Anatolia, it's like a spider at the center of a colossal web, with trade routes stretching out in every direction. To the south lies the ancient land of Canaan, brimming with luxury goods and new ideas. To the east, the Assyrians, always on the lookout for new markets and opportunities. And then there's the Aegean to the west, with its own allure of Mycenaean traders and their exotic wares. You navigate through this landscape as a savvy merchant, acutely aware of the significance of these connections. The goods you trade are more than mere objects. They're the building blocks of an interconnected world. The tin you're eyeing today might have travelled from as far away as the mines of Afghanistan, a journey that would make even the most seasoned globetrotter's head spin. It might have taken months to get here, passing through countless hands, each leaving its mark in the form of increased prices and tales of adventure. As you stroll through the market, you can't help but notice the diversity of people and products. Wool from the highlands rubs shoulders with fine linens from Egypt. Spices from far-off lands mingle their scents, creating a fragrant tapestry in the air. The market is a living map of the Hittite Empire's economic reach, a testament to how trade shapes the world. Yet, behind the allure of exotic goods lies a harsh reality. Trade is no easy game. Routes are perilous, beset by bandits and the ever-present threat of political upheaval. The Hittites are known for their military prowess, but even they can't control every twist and turn of the trade routes. As a merchant, you must navigate these waters with care, weighing the risks and rewards with every transaction. Despite the challenges, there's a certain romance in this life, an intoxicating mix of danger and opportunity that keeps you coming back for more. The market is a theatre of dreams, each stall a stage where fortunes are made and lost with the flick of a wrist and a well-placed word. As the sun climbs higher, casting its golden light over the city, you're reminded of the importance of your role in this grand tapestry. You're not just a cog in the machine. You're a vital part of an empire that stretches its influence across continents. Each transaction is a thread in the fabric of history, weaving together stories of people and places that will shape the world for centuries to come. In this market, you're more than just a merchant. You're a guardian of the past, a creator of the future, and an adventurer in the present. Each day brings new challenges and new opportunities, and today is no different. As you prepare to dive into the day's dealings, you take a moment to savor the unique blend of chaos and order that defines life in Hattusa. Here, in this ancient city, you're part of something greater, a legacy that will echo through the ages. As you prepare to dive into the day's dealings, you take a moment to savor the unique blend of chaos and order that defines life in Hattusa. But don't get too lost in the poetry of it all. There's tin to be snagged, and you know just how vital that is. Bronze doesn't just grow on trees after all. As you haggle with a fellow merchant over that precious stash of tin, you can't help but reflect on the intricate political dance that underpins every transaction here. Hattusa is no isolated kingdom. It's a central player in the ancient geopolitical game, where alliances are as fickle as a cat's affection. Take Egypt, for instance. The Hittites and Egyptians are like frenemies before the term was cool. On one hand, you've got the famous Treaty of Kadesh, signed around 1259 BC between the Hittite king Hattusili III and Pharaoh Ramses II. It's history's first known peace treaty, and it reads like a document from a very formal couples therapy session. They promised to stop trying to annihilate each other in exchange for trade and mutual defense. The treaty even included an extradition clause for political refugees. Talk about ancient international law. But let's not romanticize it too much. This wasn't about hugs and harmony, it was about cold, hard economics. Trade routes were safer when the big players weren't at each other's throats, and that meant more goods and more silver for everyone involved. And silver, as we've already established, is the name of the game. The treaty helped stabilize the region, ensuring that the tin you're eyeing could make its way here from distant lands without being intercepted by some opportunistic warlord with a penchant for plunder. Meanwhile, the Assyrians are another story. Always the ambitious neighbors. They're like that one guy at work who's constantly gunning for your job. The Hittites and Assyrians shared a tense relationship, filled with as many power plays and backstabbing episodes as your favorite political drama. Treaties with them were less about peace and more about strategic pauses, like a truce with a neighbor who borrows your lawnmower and never returns it. This is where the scribes come in, the unsung heroes or maybe anti-heroes of the ancient world. These guys were the original spin doctors, meticulously documenting every twist and turn of Hittite diplomacy. When they weren't busy carving out treaties on clay tablets, they were drafting letters, recording trade agreements, and generally ensuring that the empire's affairs were as organized as a tax audit. Hittite scribes were known for their detailed accounts, which might explain why we know so much about the empire today. They were the historians, bureaucrats, and sometimes propagandists, their styluses, the Twitter of the Bronze Age. But let's not forget, in a world where literacy is a premium skill, scribes were the gatekeepers of information. They wielded power with every stroke, their records shaping the narrative for generations to come. Imagine the pressure. Get one detail wrong, and your boss might take it out on you with more than just a stern memo. You might find yourself reassigned to the empire's most remote outpost, counting sheep instead of silver. As you finalize your tin transaction, the weight of the Hittite Empire's political landscape sits heavily on your shoulders. You're not just a merchant making a sale, you're part of a vast, interconnected web of treaties and rivalries that dictate the flow of goods and fortunes. Each piece of tin in your possession is a testament to the delicate balancing act that is ancient diplomacy, a game where one wrong move could send everything tumbling down. The political machinations of the Hittite Empire may seem like the stuff of epic legends, but the reality is much more complex and, dare I say, bureaucratic. It's a world where the stakes are as high as the walls of Hattusa, and the players must navigate a labyrinth of alliances and enmities, all while keeping an eye on the bottom line. After all, in the end, it's all about ensuring that the silver keeps flowing and the tin keeps coming, because in this world, as in any other, money talks, and it talks loudly. So as you pocket your silver and make your way through the bustling market, remember, you're not just moving metal, you're participating in a grand historical narrative where every choice echoes through time. The Hittite Empire may be a relic of the past, but its lessons in diplomacy, trade, and the art of the deal are as relevant today as they were back then. And who knows? Maybe someday future historians will look back at your transactions with the same intrigue and admiration we feel for those ancient scribes. But for now, keep your wits sharp and your haggling sharper. There's a legacy to be built, one tin ingot at a time. With your pouch of silver clinking merrily by your side, you head toward a bustling street vendor for a well-earned meal, because even savvy merchants need sustenance. Here in Hattusa, midday means it's time to refuel with some hearty flatbread and honey, perhaps washed down with a cup of barley beer, the ancient equivalent of a power lunch. As you chew, you can't help but ponder the social tapestry woven around you, a quilt of class, commerce, and a surprising degree of gender equality that would give even modern societies a run for their money. Let's unravel this tapestry, starting with the layers of Hittite society. At the top, like the cherry on a rather bureaucratic sundae, is the king, who combines the roles of head honcho and high priest. Below him are the nobles and officials, the types who get their names etched on treaties and monuments. Then come the free citizens, the backbone of the empire, including, you guessed it, merchants like yourself. Last but not least, the slaves, who are both the engine and the caboose in this social train. Unlike the grim depictions of endless toil, Hittite slaves could actually own property and even buy their freedom. Not exactly a five-star life, but a step up from the pit of despair. Now, brace yourself for a twist more surprising than finding a plot hole in a time travel movie. Women in Hittite society wielded remarkable influence. Forget the stereotype of the silent ancient wife. Hittite women could own land, engage in trade, and even act as witnesses in court. Queen Putuhepa, the wife of King Hattusili III, wasn't just sitting around knitting tunics. She was a diplomatic powerhouse, corresponding with Pharaoh Ramses II and co-signing treaties. Picture her as a Bronze Age power broker, but with fewer conference calls and more clay tablets. The Hittite women were also players in the bustling markets. Imagine them haggling over textiles and spices with the same gusto as their male counterparts. They weren't just background figures, they were active participants in the economy. And in a society governed by strict laws, they had rights that were astonishingly progressive. Hittite divorce laws, for instance, were the kind of forward-thinking that might just leave your jaw on the floor. A woman could initiate divorce, and if the husband was at fault, she could leave with her dowry and half of the shared property. Not quite an amicable split, but certainly less of a battle royale than one might expect. Speaking of laws, let's tackle the Hittite legal codes, an elaborate affair that makes modern law books look like light reading. These codes weren't just about property disputes and theft. They also delved into the nitty-gritty of everyday life, covering everything from land use to animal husbandry. And while some laws were about as forgiving as a bad haircut, Others demonstrated a keen sense of fairness. Take the case of theft. A thief had to repay double the stolen amount. Harsh, but it beats losing a hand, right? But before you start imagining a utopia, remember that these laws were a double-edged sword. They maintained order, but also reinforced the power dynamics of the time. The king was the ultimate arbiter, and his word was, quite literally, law. It's a reminder that while the Hittites were ahead of their time in some respects, they were still very much a product of their era, complex, hierarchical, and deeply pragmatic. Now, let's switch gears to the juicier stuff. Ancient gossip. Hittite society had its fair share of intrigue, enough to keep any ancient scribe scribbling furiously. Take the case of King Muwatalli II, whose move to shift the capital from Hattusa to Tarhuntassa had tongues wagging more than a royal scandal. It was like the ancient equivalent of moving the White House to Las Vegas. This decision was not just a logistical nightmare, it had political and religious implications that kept the rumour mill grinding. And let's not forget the infamous affair of the priestess and the merchant, a scandal straight out of a soap opera. The priestess, caught in a compromising position with a local trader, was the talk of the town. The fallout was a mess of legal proceedings and public shaming, but it also highlighted the thin line between religious duty and personal desire. In a world where gods and commerce went hand in hand, this was a PR disaster of monumental proportions. As you finish your meal, the sun begins its slow descent, casting long shadows over the streets of Hattusa. The market noise softens, but the day's lessons linger. Hittite society, with its progressive laws and strong-willed women, offers a fascinating window into an ancient world that was anything but static. It was a world where the social fabric was constantly being rewoven, each thread contributing to a complex, vibrant culture that was as full of contradictions as it was of innovations. As you prepare to dive back into the market fray, remember, the past is never as distant as it seems. The Hittites, with their blend of tradition and progress, remind us that history isn't just a series of dates and facts. It's a dynamic story, one that continues to unfold as we piece together the fragments of those who walked before us. So keep your eyes peeled and your mind open. There are more tales to be told, and you're just the merchant to uncover them. With your belly full and your mind buzzing with the morning's market deals and social revelations, you decide to take a stroll to one of Hattusa's grandest temples. After all, what better way to digest lunch than with a side of divine inspiration? As you meander through the streets, you realize that religion in the ancient world wasn't just a Sunday affair. It was a full-time gig, woven into the very fabric of life, like a particularly stubborn piece of wool in a tapestry. As you approach the temple, its massive stone walls loom like a reminder of both the Hittites' architectural prowess and their devotion to the gods. The temple is dedicated to the storm god Tahuna, a deity who had more mood swings than a soap opera villain. This guy was responsible for both the life-giving rains and the kind of weather that made you regret not investing in an ancient umbrella. In a place where agriculture was king, keeping Tahuna happy was a social obligation and an economic necessity. The temple itself is no mere house of worship. It's a bustling hub of activity, a spiritual nerve center that also moonlights as a bank, a marketplace, and occasionally a courtroom. Here, you see priests and priestesses going about their daily rituals, a sight that might seem exotic to modern eyes, but was as ordinary to the Hittites as checking your email is to us. These religious figures wield incredible power, not just as intermediaries between the divine and the mundane, but as key players in the city's economy. Let's talk about the economics of belief. You see, temples weren't just places to pray for a good harvest or a winning chariot race. They were financial powerhouses, collecting offerings and managing land that had been donated by those hoping to curry favor with the gods. Imagine a combination of the IRS and a spiritual hotline, and you're halfway there. The priests, with their hands on both the spiritual and the material till, could make or break fortunes with a single blessing or curse. But here's the kicker. The priests weren't just spiritual leaders, they were also savvy business operators. They'd lease temple lands to farmers and take a cut of the produce, effectively running the ancient equivalent of a corporate farming operation. And don't even get me started on the priestly tax exemptions. These guys could give modern tax havens a run for their money. As you wander through the temple complex, you can't help but notice the sheer volume of clay tablets stacked like ancient spreadsheets. Each one meticulously records transactions, donations, and, of course, the occasional divine intervention. The Hittites were nothing if not thorough. These records were the lifeblood of temple operations, ensuring that every grain of barley and silver shekel was accounted for. It makes you wonder if the priests ever dreamed of a world with Excel. Yet, behind this veneer of divine duty and economic acumen, there lurked a darker side to priestly power. These holy men and women were as prone to human failings as the next person, and their influence extended into the murky waters of politics and intrigue. Picture this. A priest with a grudge could easily sway public opinion by claiming to have received a less than favorable message from the gods about a rival noble. It was a strategy as old as time and about as subtle as a chariot crash. The potential for scandal was never far from the surface. Power and religion have always been a volatile mix, and in Hattusa, the whispers of priestly misconduct could spark a scandal bigger than a royal divorce. Imagine a priest accused of siphoning temple funds to build a private villa. It's the kind of divine comedy that would have even the gods rolling their eyes. But let's not throw the sacred baby out with the temple bathwater. Religion in Hattusa was also a source of community and continuity. It provided a shared set of beliefs and practices that knit society together. The rituals and ceremonies, from grand festivals to intimate daily offerings, were a way for the people to connect with their gods and each other. It was religion as social glue, binding the empire's diverse peoples into a coherent whole. Now, let's debunk the myth of the pious priesthood. While it's tempting to imagine these figures as paragons of virtue, the reality was far more complex. Priests were human, after all, and their motivations were as varied as those of the merchants haggling in the marketplace. Some were genuinely devout, dedicating their lives to serving their community and their gods. Others saw the priesthood as a pathway to power and wealth, a chance to influence the course of events from the shadows. As the afternoon sun casts long shadows over the temple courtyard, you're reminded of the delicate balance between faith and pragmatism that defined Hittite religion. It was a system built on both genuine devotion and calculated strategy, where spiritual and economic interests often intersected. In a world where the favor of the gods could mean the difference between feast and famine, it's no wonder that the temple was a central pillar of Hittite life. As you leave the temple, the weight of its history and significance lingers in your mind. You've seen firsthand how the sacred and the secular were intertwined, each feeding into the other in a symbiotic dance that sustained the empire. Here, in the heart of Hattusa, religion wasn't just about the divine, it was about power, politics, and the ever-present pursuit of prosperity. But don't get too lost in the reverie, there's still more to uncover in this ancient city. As you make your way back to the bustling streets, you can't help but wonder what other stories lie hidden in the stones of Hattusa, waiting to be brought to light. After all, in a city where every transaction, every prayer, and every scandal is etched into the annals of history, there's always another tale to tell. And as a merchant with a keen eye for opportunity, you're just the person to uncover them. Keep your wits about you and your sense of humor sharp. There are more divine mysteries and mortal machinations to explore before the sun sets on this ancient world. As you step back into the streets of Hattusa, the sun is staging its grand exit, painting the sky in hues that would make a Renaissance artist weep. It's the kind of evening where even the stones of the city seem to hum with history, each one a silent witness to the rise and fall of empires. Speaking of which, let's talk about the Hittites' decline, a story often drenched in myth and mystery, like a historical whodunit with too many suspects. Now, if you've heard the tale that the Hittites vanished overnight like ancient Houdinis, it's time for a reality check. The truth is less about chariots turning into pumpkins, and more about the slow grind of geopolitical pressures and internal strife. By the late 13th century BC, the Hittite Empire was feeling the heat from all sides. Picture it like a middle-aged empire having a midlife crisis, but instead of buying a sporty chariot, it's beset by invasions and famines. First on the list of headaches were the Sea Peoples, an enigmatic group whose sudden arrival in the eastern Mediterranean was as welcome as a surprise audit. Around 1200 BC, they caused havoc across the region, toppling cities and disrupting trade networks faster than you could say economic downturn. The Hittites, with their strategic location and extensive trade routes, were caught in the crossfire. Their once thriving economy began to sputter like an old wagon wheel, unable to keep pace with the demands of an empire stretched too thin. Adding to the drama was the internal instability. The Hittite kings weren't exactly winning any popularity contests in their final years. Infighting among the nobility, succession disputes, and regional governors more concerned with personal power than imperial stability left the empire as cohesive as a sandcastle in a storm. It's the kind of palace intrigue that would make modern political dramas look like child's play. And then there's the environmental factor, always lurking like a silent villain in the story of civilization. Archaeological evidence suggests that a prolonged drought hit Anatolia during the Late Bronze Age, turning fertile lands into barren fields. When the rain stopped, so did the surplus food supplies, and with it the stability of the Hittite state. It was a triple threat of bad weather, bad politics, and bad neighbours, leading to a slow but steady decline. By around 178 BC, Hattusa was abandoned, not with a bang, but a whimper. The city that once thrummed with the energy of 1,000 traders and scribes lay silent, its grand temples and palaces left to the elements. But let's not romanticize the fall as a complete vanishing act. The Hittites didn't disappear, they simply evolved. The Neo-Hittite states that emerged in the aftermath continued to carry the cultural torch, albeit on a smaller scale. They kept the flame alive, passing down traditions and innovations like a relay race through history. Speaking of innovations, let's not let the fall overshadow the Hittites' contributions to the world, a legacy that stretches beyond crumbled walls and faded clay tablets. For starters, their legal codes were a significant leap forward in the quest for justice, a precursor to the complex legal systems we have today. Sure, the laws could be as forgiving as a cactus, but their emphasis on compensation over corporal punishment was refreshingly modern. Then there's their diplomacy. The Treaty of Kadesh wasn't just a ceasefire, it was a masterclass in negotiation, a blueprint for conflict resolution that resonates even now. And let's not overlook the Hittites' metallurgical prowess. Their mastery of iron smelting was a game-changer, ushering in the Iron Age and transforming warfare, agriculture, and industry. It's like they were the Silicon Valley of the ancient world, revolutionizing everything with a new metal. In the realm of religion, the Hittites were syncretists before it was trendy, blending gods and rituals from different cultures into a complex pantheon that reflected the diversity of their empire. This melting pot of deities and beliefs was more than just a theological curiosity. It was a testament to the Hittites' openness to external influences, a willingness to adapt and adopt that was crucial to their initial success. As the last rays of sunlight wane, casting Hattusa in a twilight glow, you can't help but ponder the enduring impact of this ancient civilization. The Hittites were more than just a footnote in the annals of history. They were pioneers in diplomacy, law, and technology, their innovations rippling outwards through time. They remind us that history isn't just a series of events, but a tapestry woven from countless threads, each one contributing to the intricate pattern of human progress. So as you make your way home, the weight of the day's discovery settling comfortably on your shoulders, remember that the Hittites, with all their triumphs and tribulations, are a mirror reflecting the complexities of our own world. Their story, like all good tales, is one of rise and fall, of ambition and adversity, and ultimately of resilience. It's a reminder that even in the ruins of the past, we can find the building blocks of the future, a legacy of innovation, adaptation, and the indomitable human spirit. And as you close the door behind you, the ancient city now a silhouette against the night sky, take a moment to reflect on the lessons learned from a day in the life of Hattusa. In a world that often feels as chaotic as an ancient marketplace, the Hittites offer a timeless perspective, to navigate the challenges of our time with the same ingenuity and determination that they once did. Because if there's one thing history teaches us, it's that the past is never truly gone. It echoes in the present and shapes the possibilities of tomorrow. So here's to the Hittites, a civilization that, despite its fall, continues to inspire. You're waking up in the 8th century Anatolia, which is now modern-day Turkey. As a Byzantine noblewoman, your morning isn't exactly a stroll through a Pinterest-perfect manor. Instead, it's more like managing a bustling medieval operation, complete with the latest in chamber pots. Yeah, Welcome to the cutting edge of medieval plumbing. Your day starts in a mosaic-laden bedroom. These floors are a marvel of artistry, with tiny, polished stones laid in intricate patterns beneath your feet. Byzantine mosaics are not just floor candy, they're status symbols. Forget wall art, your ground game is on point. But don't get too comfortable in your patchwork paradise. You've got a household to run, and it's not as glamorous as the mosaics suggest. Now, about this manor, it's less Downton Abbey and more, what do you mean we're out of wine? It's a sprawling estate with a layout optimized for managing everything from agriculture to hospitality. Your house is the center of a micro-empire, and you're its CEO. The Byzantine Empire may be a behemoth, but it's your job to ensure your corner of it runs smoothly. You navigate through the manor, where you're greeted with the faint smell of olive oil soap and a chorus of calamira from your bustling staff. And yes, that includes the guy whose job it is to empty the chamber pots. Fancy plumbing? This ain't. You pass through rooms dedicated to weaving, wine storage, and maybe even a granary. You've got to keep those Byzantine banquets coming after all. Let's talk about money, because managing a manor is a bit like balancing a checkbook with Roman numerals. Your currency of choice is the solidus, a gold coin that weighs about 4.5 grams, and it's as heavy in your pocket as it is on your mind. With inflation and economic pressures, knowing how much to spend and where is a delicate dance. A solidus can buy you a fine bolt of silk or pay a servant's wages for a month. So, you're basically an accountant with a flair for fabrics. Now, who's in your entourage? You've got relatives, servants, and maybe a few scribes who help you with correspondence. Remember, this is the time when a letter takes weeks, maybe months, to reach its destination. You have to be the queen of patience and multitasking, handling everything from seasonal harvests to social gatherings. Social hierarchy in the Byzantine Empire is as layered as your breakfast pastries. At the top, you've got the emperor in Constantinople, the ultimate authority, who you'll likely never meet. Then there's the local governor, who you might have to entertain, and beneath him, the landowners like yourself, each with a mini fiefdom to manage. Your role is pivotal. You're not just running a household, you're an economic and social linchpin, ensuring the manor's productivity aligns with the empire's demands. Managing household finances isn't just about keeping the pantry stocked. It's about making sure your estate is profitable, which requires an understanding of trade routes and market demands. The Silk Road is your Amazon Prime, but with camels instead of delivery drones. Silk, spices, and other exotic goods pass through your hands, and knowing when to buy and sell is crucial. Your role as a noblewoman also involves diplomacy. You might be negotiating marriages or alliances, making you a key player in the Byzantine social chess game. You wield power not through brute force, but by orchestrating the social and economic symphony of your manor. And remember, your influence can ripple through the empire, affecting trade, politics, and maybe even the next emperor's policy. As you sip the morning's first cup of wine, watered down, of course, because nobody wants to start the day tipsy, you reflect on the empire's grandeur and its gritty reality. Yes, you're part of a civilization known for its art, culture, and military might, but you're also knee-deep in the Byzantine bureaucracy, where every decision counts and every solidus matters. With the sun climbing higher, you prepare to face the day. It's time to check the estate's ledgers, meet with the steward, and maybe catch up on the latest gossip. Because even in the 8th century, keeping up appearances is crucial. As the head of your household, you'll ensure that everything from the grape harvest to next month's feast is on track, all while maintaining your social standing and the manor's economic health. Welcome to life as a Byzantine noblewoman, where history isn't just something you read about, it's the world you navigate every single day. As you face the Byzantine day's demands, it's time to shift from the mundane grind of estate management to the spiritual realm. After all, in the Byzantine Empire, religion isn't just a personal affair, it permeates every aspect of life, like olive oil on a fresh loaf of bread. So, you trade your ledgers for a prayer book and make your way to the local church. Ah, the Byzantine church, where the architecture is as grand as the faith it houses. You're greeted by the sight of stunning domes and intricate mosaics depicting saints and biblical scenes. It's like stepping into a spiritual kaleidoscope. This isn't just any old building. It's a microcosm of Byzantine society, a place where heaven and earth meet, quite literally, under one roof. The church is where community life revolves, and you, as a noblewoman, are a key player in this celestial chess game. Now, let's dive into the theological roller coaster that is the iconoclast controversy. Picture this. It's the 8th century, and suddenly everyone's debating whether your cherished religious icons are divine conduits or mere blasphemous baubles. The iconoclasts, who think icons are a no-go, are smashing them faster than you can say heresy, while the iconodules are clutching their mosaics like they're the last loaf of bread in a famine. This isn't just a theological squabble, it's a full-blown cultural earthquake that shakes the empire to its gilded foundations. Your stance on this controversy could dictate more than just your spiritual salvation. It could colour your social circles, influence who you can wine and dine with, and even affect your home decor. Imagine having to decide whether to display that lavish icon of the Virgin Mary in your sitting room or risk being labelled an iconoclast sympathizer. It's like choosing between a Picasso and blank walls, only with eternal consequences. Religious debates aside, the church also dictates the rhythm of your daily life through its festivals and feast days. These aren't just quaint little gatherings with hymns and incense. They're grand events that could rival any modern-day music festival, minus the mosh pits. Planning your household around these festivals is a logistical feat. Just try organising a feast for the Feast of the Dormition with the same precision you apply to the grape harvest. It's all part of maintaining your social standing and ensuring your household aligns with the empire's spiritual calendar. The impact of these religious festivals on daily life is immense. They're the social and economic lifeblood of the community, a chance to showcase your wealth and piety while reinforcing your status. You see, in Byzantium, how you celebrate religious feasts can speak volumes about your devotion and your bank account. Hosting a feast means pulling out all the stops, lavish banquets, the finest wines, perhaps even a bard or two to entertain the guests. It's a bit like hosting a state dinner, but with more incense and fewer political agendas. Now, let's talk about the economic angle of this whole religious affair. Maintaining the lavish decor and hosting these events isn't cheap. You're shelling out serious solidi for the finest silks and spices to impress your guests. Again, we're talking about the solidus, that trusty gold coin weighing in at about 4.5 grams. It's like the Bitcoin of the Byzantine economy, only with fewer market fluctuations and more gold. A single feast could cost you a small fortune, but in Byzantium, appearances are everything. It's all about maintaining your place in the social hierarchy, and frankly, no one wants to be the noblewoman who skimps on her saintly celebrations. In this theocratic society, religion isn't just a private belief, it's a public affair, woven into the very fabric of your daily life. From the church's sermons to the saints' feast days, your spiritual obligations are as real as the taxes you pay. And just like those taxes, your religious duties are non-negotiable. The empire might have its secular rulers, but the church holds sway over the hearts and minds of its people. And you, dear noblewoman, are right in the middle of it all, juggling politics, piety, and the occasional theological controversy with the grace of a trapeze artist. So as you leave the church, perhaps with a new perspective on the day's events, you can't help but reflect on the intricate dance between faith and daily life in this empire of contradictions. You're not just a spectator in this divine drama, you're a participant, shaping and being shaped by the tides of belief and power. With your spiritual duties tended to and your mind buzzing with thoughts of icons and incense, it's time to return to the worldly concerns of estate management, because in the Byzantine Empire, there's always another solidus to earn and another feast to plan. And so, with your soul freshly scrubbed by incense and iconography, it's time to roll up your sleeves and dive into the gritty world of estate management. The afternoon sun is casting its golden glow over Anatolia, and you've got a small agricultural empire to oversee. Forget the romantic notion of leisurely strolls through wheat fields. This is more like running a medieval startup, where wheat and olives are your bread and butter, or should I say, your barley and olive oil. First up, let's talk about wheat. It's the staple of your Byzantine diet, the foundation of everything from humble flatbread to extravagant feast day pastries. Anatolia, with its fertile soil and strategic position, is the pantry of the Byzantine Empire. Your estate's wheat fields are more than just picturesque backdrops. they're crucial to the regional economy. A bad harvest doesn't just mean fewer loaves at your table, it can ripple through the market like a stone in a pond, affecting prices across the empire. Managing these fields is no small feat. It requires a keen understanding of the seasons, weather patterns, and the eternal struggle against pests. You need to know when to sow, when to reap, and how to store your grain to prevent it from becoming a rodent's all-you-can-eat buffet. And all this while keeping an eye on your solidus count, because maintaining a granary is as much about finance as it is about farming. Now, on to olives. The ancient world's answer to bacon, making everything taste better. Olives and their oil are the lifeblood of your estate, used in cooking, lighting, and even anointing. The olive press on your estate is a hub of activity where workers crush olives between massive stone wheels to extract the precious oil. It's a messy, labor-intensive process, and you'd better believe you're keeping track of every amphora of oil produced. Each drop is worth its weight in gold, or at least in solidi. Speaking of labor, let's dispel the myth that estate management is all about lounging around in silk robes while minions toil away. Sure, you've got serfs and maybe a few slaves working the fields, but managing them is a complex dance of authority and, let's face it, a bit of fear. Labor issues abound, from organizing work schedules to ensuring the workers are fed and housed. Remember, a disgruntled serf is a liability, not an asset. And here's where we wade into the murky waters of the pronoia system. This Byzantine precursor to feudalism is like a medieval mix of landlord and lieutenant. Under pronoia, land is granted not just for agricultural production, but as a reward for military service. A sort of thank you for not letting the empire crumble bonus. This means land ownership is as tangled in politics as it is in produce. Keeping your estate productive isn't just about feeding your family, it's about keeping your political patrons happy and your military obligations fulfilled. Now, managing land through pronoia might sound like a sweet deal. Land, prestige, and a bit of power. But don't be fooled by the romantic veneer. It's a tightrope walk, balancing the demands of your agricultural duties against the ever-looming expectations of the Byzantine bureaucracy. Fail to deliver on your obligations, and you might find your land and your head on the chopping block. The pronoia system also means that your social standing is intrinsically tied to your ability to manage your estate. It's not just about how much land you have, but how effectively you can turn that land into wealth and influence. In a world where political fortunes can shift faster than the Anatolian winds, your estate is both your lifeline and your legacy. As you navigate these challenges, the afternoon sun begins its slow descent, casting long shadows over the fields. You take a moment to survey your domain, knowing that every decision you make reverberates beyond your estate's borders. The wheat and olive oil you produce feed not just your household, but contribute to the complex economic web of the empire. Each amphora of oil, each bushel of wheat, is a testament to your skill as a manager and your savvy as a businesswoman. In the Byzantine Empire, agriculture isn't just a job, it's a calling. It's a testament to human ingenuity and resilience, a daily reminder of the empire's reliance on its noblewomen to keep the wheels of economy turning. As you oversee the day's final tasks, you reflect on the delicate balance of power, politics, and production that defines your life. And so, as the day draws to a close, you prepare to return to the manor where the evening's responsibilities await. You've kept the estate running smoothly, navigated the intricacies of Byzantine politics, and ensured that your household remains a pillar of the local economy. In the Byzantine world, every day is an opportunity to shape your destiny, one bushel of wheat and amphora of oil at a time. As the sun dips below the horizon, casting its final golden glow over the Anatolian landscape, your thoughts shift from the earthy toil of agriculture to the loftier pursuits of the mind. Welcome to the evening wind down, 8th century Byzantine style. This isn't your typical Netflix and chill time. Instead, you might find yourself immersed in a scroll of Homer, or perhaps penning a few lines of verse that would make any bard swoon. Let's talk about education in Byzantium, a subject that might surprise you. The popular myth paints the Byzantine Empire as a place where only monks and scribes held the keys to literacy. But that's about as accurate as saying medieval knights were just a bunch of guys in shiny armor. education here is a big deal. Sure, monks are the rock stars of scriptoria, but noblewomen like you are hardly left in the intellectual dust. In fact, literacy is more common than you'd think. You're reading the classics, not just because they're the ancient world's equivalent of the New York Times bestseller list, but because knowledge is power, and you, dear noblewoman, are all about that power. Picture this. You're nestled in your candlelit chamber, poring over a text by the philosopher Plato. Education is a serious affair, and you're not just skimming for fun facts. You're engaging with ideas that shape the empire's philosophical and political thought. It's like a cerebral workout, lifting heavy intellectual weights to keep your mental muscles toned. Your literary endeavours might even extend to composing poetry, a noble pastime that allows you to express the intricacies of your world in verse. And let's be real, in a society where your voice is often muted, crafting a few stanzas is a subtle yet potent way to make yourself heard. Now, let's dive into the economic nitty-gritty of education. It's not just a matter of having the time to read, it's about having the resources. Manuscripts don't grow on trees, or rather, they do, but only after the papyrus is harvested and meticulously crafted into writing material. A single manuscript might cost you a pretty handful of solidi, depending on its length and complexity. So, owning a library, even a modest one, is a statement of wealth and status. It's like having a first edition collection in today's terms, only with a bit more dust and a lot more reverence. But you're not just a passive consumer of culture, you're an active patron. Byzantine women, especially those of noble birth, have long been patrons of the arts. We're talking serious influence here. You might commission a mosaic or fund a new fresco in the local church. And while your name might not always make it into the history books, your legacy is quite literally ingrained in the empire's art and architecture. It's like being a silent partner in a world-renowned art gallery, except your contributions are etched in stone rather than displayed on a wall. The role of women in Byzantine artistic patronage is a fascinating dance of power and subtlety. While the men might be out waging wars or debating theology, you're at home shaping the cultural landscape. This isn't just a domestic pursuit, it's a political one. By sponsoring artists and architects, you're asserting your family's prestige and aligning yourself with the spiritual and cultural currents of the age. It's a bit like being a social media influencer, only with fewer hashtags and more frescoes. Let's not forget the social chess game that is Byzantine society. Your intellectual pursuits and artistic patronage are more than just hobbies. They're strategic moves in the ongoing battle for status and influence. In a world where your public image matters almost as much as your actual power, every scroll you read and every mosaic you commission is a piece of the grand puzzle that defines your place in the Byzantine hierarchy. And here's a curveball. The empire's cultural scene isn't just a playground for the elite. The broader Byzantine population also engages with the arts, whether through church services, public festivals, or even simple folk songs that echo through the streets. It's a society where high and low culture intermingle, creating a vibrant tapestry of artistic expression. You're part of this cultural ecosystem, navigating its complexities with the deftness of a seasoned sailor steering through a storm. As the evening unfolds, you're reminded of the delicate balance you must maintain. You're not just a consumer of culture, you're a creator, a patron, a participant in a civilization that values the written word, the painted icon, and the sculpted stone. Your intellectual pursuits and artistic endeavors are not mere pastimes, they're integral to the fabric of Byzantine life. They're your legacy, your voice, and your contribution to the empire's lasting heritage. So, as you set aside your scroll and extinguish the candles, you reflect on the cultural tapestry you've helped weave. In a world where power is often wielded in whispers and gestures, you've found your own way to leave a mark that echoes through the ages. And with tomorrow promising another day of challenges and opportunities, you rest assured in the knowledge that your influence, though subtle, is as enduring as the empire itself. As you snuff out the last candle, the flickering shadows of antiquity fade, and your thoughts shift from the microcosm of your manor to the macrocosm of the Byzantine Empire's geopolitical theatre. It's not all olive groves and scrolls, my friend. The Byzantine Empire is like a medieval Game of Thrones, only with fewer dragons and more diplomatic headaches. The empire is perpetually sandwiched between the relentless tides of the Umayyad Caliphate to the south and the burgeoning Bulgarian Empire to the north. It's a bit like playing chess with two opponents simultaneously, each move scrutinized, each piece vital. You see, the Umayyad Caliphate isn't just a neighbor with a penchant for conquest. It's the formidable force that nearly swallowed Constantinople itself during the sieges of 674, 678, and again in 717-78. Picture this: arrows raining down like medieval confetti, and the Byzantines deploying their secret weapon, Greek fire. An ancient flamethrower that makes modern pyrotechnics look like sparklers. It's a testament to Byzantine resilience and ingenuity, but it also means that your empire is in a perpetual state of vigilance. The threat of invasion isn't a distant nightmare, it's the morning news. And let's not forget the Bulgarians, whose empire to the north is flexing its muscles like a gym bro in the mirror. They're not just content with their lands, they're eyeing Byzantine territory like it's the last slice of pizza at a party. The Treaty of 706 with Khan Tervel might have brought a temporary truce, but alliances in this era are as stable as a table with one leg shorter than the other. These external pressures mean that the Byzantine Empire is a cauldron of political maneuvering, where every military threat requires a calculated diplomatic response. Enter the Byzantine strategy of marriage alliances, a historical Tinder of sorts, where matches are made not for love, but for political gain. As a noblewoman, you understand the power of this strategy, even if it's not your idea of romance. Marriages are brokered like business deals, with dowries, titles, and territories exchanged as collateral. It's a bit like trading Pokemon cards, only instead of Charizard, you're bargaining over duchies and alliances. Each marriage is a carefully plotted move in the Byzantine chess game, aiming to solidify alliances and stave off external threats. Take, for instance, the marriage of Emperor Constantine I to Irene of Khazaria in 732. This union wasn't just a romantic getaway, it was a calculated maneuver to secure the Byzantine Empire's northeastern borders. The Khazars were a formidable power, and aligning with them was a strategic necessity. It's a reminder that in Byzantium, love might be blind, but politics certainly isn't. But don't be fooled by the romantic veneer of these alliances. Behind the silk veils and gilded palaces lies a brutal reality. These marriages often come with strings attached, and not the pretty kind that tie up wedding bouquets. They're fraught with intrigue, betrayal, and the ever-present danger of a dagger in the back, sometimes literally. It's a world where trust is a luxury and betrayal is currency. Yet, amid this web of alliances and animosities, the role of Byzantine noblewomen shines through. Often overshadowed by their male counterparts, these women are the unsung heroes of the empire's diplomatic efforts. Their contributions, while frequently unrecorded, are nonetheless significant. From negotiating alliances to managing estates that fund military campaigns, they wield power through subtler, yet no less effective, means. You, as a Byzantine noblewoman, might not lead armies into battle, but your influence is felt in the council chambers and across the empire's social networks. Whether through whispered counsel or strategic marriages, you're a key player in maintaining the empire's stability. It's a role that requires intellect, diplomacy, and a bit of cunning, a testament to the complexity and resilience of Byzantine society. As you reflect on your place in this grand tapestry, you realize that your legacy, though perhaps not carved in marble, is woven into the very fabric of the empire. Each decision you make, each alliance you broker, contributes to the Byzantine narrative. It's a story of survival and adaptation, where the empire's endurance is as much about the strength of its women as it is about the might of its armies. So, as the night deepens and the cool Anatolian breeze whispers through the olive groves, you contemplate the legacy you'll leave behind. It's a legacy not just of estates and alliances, but of resilience and ingenuity in an empire that stands as a beacon of civilization amid the tumult of the medieval world. Your contributions, though subtle, echo through the corridors of history, reminding us that the true power of Byzantium lies not only in its walls and armies, but in the quiet strength of its noblewomen. And with that thought, you drift into sleep, dreaming of a world where your influence continues to shape the future in ways both grand and unseen. In the Byzantine Empire, as in life, the real victories are often won in the shadows, where the true architects of history reside. In the haze of the ancient Egyptian desert, where the sun blazed with all the subtlety of a rock concert spotlight, a curious craft was quietly shaping up. Here's a plot twist. While we often think of Egypt as the land of pyramids and otherworldly bling, it was also the birthplace of something far more delicate, glassmaking. Yeah, that's right, glass. We're not talking about the kind of glass you find in your local home goods store, but rather a painstakingly crafted art form that started around 500 BCE. This was long before the concept of a factory assembly line or quality control team came into the picture. Now, Egypt wasn't exactly drowning in silica, the main ingredient for glass. So, how did they pull off this ancient magic trick? Well, they imported it. The Egyptians were the original international shoppers, sourcing their raw materials like quartz pebbles from the eastern desert and natron, a type of salt used as a flux, from the Wadi Natron, just north of Cairo. If Amazon had been a thing back then, the pharaohs would have been prime members with all those logistics. At first glance, you might think that glass was as common as sand in Egypt, but here's where we slam the brakes on that romantic vision. Glass was the high-end tech of its day, a luxury reserved for those with the cash flow to back it up, namely, the royal family and temple priests. So, no, the average ancient Egyptian wasn't sipping date wine from a delicate glass goblet. More likely, they were using pottery, or even their hands if they were feeling adventurous. The Egyptians weren't just making any glass either. They were producing some of the most vibrant colors ever seen, thanks to precise chemical manipulation. They used copper compounds to achieve rich blues and greens, and iron compounds to get shades of yellow and amber. Talk about a chemistry class with stakes higher than your average high school science fair. The results were beads, amulets, and inlays that looked like they'd just been plucked from a rainbow. These items played significant roles in religious ceremonies, and were often buried with the dead to dazzle in the afterlife. Because, as we know, you can't take it with you, unless you're an ancient Egyptian, in which case you absolutely do. While we're debunking, let's tackle the myth of the solitary genius, a myth that's as persistent as sand in your sandals. The ancient Egyptians didn't have a single glass-making guru to thank. No, this was a team effort, more like a start-up in the valley, with artisans working together to perfect and innovate. Records show that glass workshops were often nestled next to palaces or temples, indicating that the production of glass was very much a state-sponsored affair. Pharaohs were the original venture capitalists, investing in crafts they deemed worthy of their divine status. But why go through all this trouble for glass? Besides its obvious aesthetic appeal, glass had symbolic importance. It was considered a magical material, often associated with the concept of rebirth and eternity. The Egyptians believed that glass, with its ability to be shaped and reshaped, mirrored the cycle of life and death. The irony is thick enough to cut with a knife. A material so fragile became a symbol for something eternal. And let's not forget the social implications. Glass signified wealth and power, a way for the elite to set themselves apart from the hoi polloi. It was the ancient equivalent of driving a luxury car, visible, status-affirming, and completely unnecessary for survival. But hey, what's the point of being a pharaoh if you can't flaunt it a little? In this ancient world of sun and sand, glass-making was not just an art form, but a reflection of the society that produced it. It was a testament to their ingenuity, and a subtle reminder that while the pyramids might steal the spotlight, the real story is often in the details. So next time you find yourself staring at a piece of glass, remember that this simple object has a history as rich and complex as any royal lineage. It's a story of resourcefulness, ambition, and the eternal human desire to leave a mark on history, preferably one that glows in the sunlight. While the pyramids capture most of the ancient Egyptian limelight, it turns out that the real action was happening in the sweltering workshops where glassmakers were turning sand into gold, or at least something equally prized. You see, the Egyptians didn't just stumble upon this craft. They were the original DIY enthusiasts, tackling the gritty realities of glassmaking with a mix of ingenuity and what can only be described as a blatant disregard for personal safety. First off, let's talk tools of the trade. Forget precision instruments and safety goggles. These artisans were armed with primitive clay crucibles and blowpipes made from reeds. The big secret sauce was the furnace, which was a blazing inferno reaching temperatures upwards of 1,000 degrees Celsius. That's over 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit for those of us still clinging to the imperial system. These furnaces were often fueled by charcoal, and the glassmakers had to maintain a delicate balance between keeping the fire hot enough to melt the materials and avoiding burning the entire workshop down. Kind of like cooking an omelette, if the omelette could potentially incinerate your house. The process started with a base recipe that hasn't changed much in millennia: sand, or more specifically, silica-rich sand, mixed with alkaline salts like natron. This wasn't just any beach sand, no leisurely strolls along the Nile to gather materials. The sand had to be meticulously selected for its purity, and the Egyptians weren't shy about importing it from distant lands if they thought it was superior. Picture them as ancient connoisseurs, sniffing sand like a sommelier with a fine wine. Once the raw materials were gathered, it was time to mix them with metallic oxides to get those vibrant colors. Copper for blue and green, iron for yellow and amber, and manganese for purple. The Egyptians didn't have the benefit of modern chemistry labs, so they relied on trial and error, a lot of it. Imagine a team of glassmakers huddled around a bubbling pot of molten glass, arguing over whether they'd added too much copper, like a group of chefs debating the perfect amount of salt. The glassmakers were also masters of recycling, long before it was trendy. Broken glass was not thrown away, it was melted down and reused. This was both an economic necessity and a practical solution. After all, glass was a precious commodity, and waste was simply not an option. They didn't call them the original environmentalists, but maybe they should have. Now, let's shatter a few myths about ancient Egyptian glassmaking. First, it wasn't a solitary affair. The image of a lone genius laboring over a hot furnace is as fictional as Cleopatra's eyeliner tutorials. Glassmaking was a collaborative effort involving teams of artisans, laborers, and supervisors. Records from the time, including fragments of papyri, suggest that these workshops were buzzing hives of activity, with each person playing a specific role in the production process. It was more startup than solitary artist, with everyone working together to ensure the final product was fit for a pharaoh. But let's not romanticize this too much. The conditions in these workshops were brutal. The heat was oppressive, the air was thick with smoke, and safety standards were, well, non-existent. The average OSHA inspector would have had a heart attack just walking in. Burns, cuts, and inhalation of toxic fumes were all part of a day's work. And yet, despite, or perhaps because of, these harsh conditions, the glassmakers persevered, driven by a mix of pride in their craft and the ever-looming pressure from their royal patrons. Economically, this was a big deal. Glassmaking was a significant industry, contributing not just to the cultural wealth of Egypt, but to its economic power as well. The export of glass items was a lucrative trade, with Egyptian glass found as far afield as Mesopotamia and the Aegean. This wasn't just about making pretty trinkets, it was about securing Egypt's place as a centre of innovation and trade in the ancient world. The political implications were just as significant. The production of glass was tightly controlled by the state, with workshops often located near royal palaces. This wasn't just about logistics, it was about power. By controlling the production and distribution of glass, the pharaohs could wield influence both domestically and abroad. Glass was more than just a commodity, it was a tool of diplomacy, a symbol of wealth and sophistication that could open doors or close them. And let's not forget the social aspect. Glass was a status symbol, a way for the elite to flaunt their wealth and distinguish themselves from the common folk. It was the ancient equivalent of a luxury watch or a designer handbag, beautiful, expensive, and completely superfluous to anyone not obsessed with social status. But that's human nature for you, always looking for ways to stand out in the crowd, even if it means risking life and limb in a sweltering workshop. So there you have it, the nitty-gritty of ancient Egyptian glassmaking. It was a world of heat, colour, and collaboration, where the stakes were high and the rewards even higher. It was a testament to human ingenuity and a reminder that even in the harshest conditions, creativity can thrive. And while the pyramids might still hog the spotlight, the real magic was happening in the shadows, where sand was transformed into something truly extraordinary. But don't worry, there's still more to this kaleidoscopic tale, waiting to be uncovered in the next part of our journey through the sands of time. While the pyramids might still hog the spotlight, the real magic was happening in the shadows, where sand was transformed into something truly extraordinary. But don't worry, there's still more to this kaleidoscopic tale, waiting to be uncovered in the next part of our journey through the sands of time. Now, Let's shift gears from the fiery furnaces to the bustling marketplaces and diplomatic courts where Egyptian glass was the jewel in the pharaoh's crowns. In the grand tapestry of ancient Egyptian society, glass was less of a thread and more of a glittering accessory, a must-have for the elite. If you think your social media feed is full of influencers flaunting the latest tech gadgets, imagine the ancient equivalent. Glass was the bling of the Bronze Age, a shiny status symbol paraded by those who could afford it. You see, while the common folk were busy with their hands in mud, crafting pottery or farming, the affluent were clinking glassware filled with imported wine. Glass was the Instagram of the ancient world, a way to showcase wealth and taste. The only difference? Their followers were real people, not just a digital count under a photo. Now, before you start envisioning a glass utopia where everyone, from pharaoh to peasant, sipped from shimmering goblets, let's smash that myth like a poorly balanced vase. Glass was a luxury that most Egyptians could only dream of. Think of it as the ancient equivalent of owning a sports car. Sure, it's nice to look at, but not something you're likely to find in every garage. The aristocrats and the priestly class were the ones cashing in on this glassy gold mine. They had the means to commission elaborate pieces, often depicting gods and pharaohs in all their glory, which were used in religious ceremonies or as opulent gifts. And who was getting rich from all this glassy goodness? Well, not the glassmakers themselves, that's for sure. These artisans were more like the unsung heroes, the underpaid labourers who made the magic happen but didn't get to share in the spoils. It was the merchants who rode the glittering wave to prosperity. Think of them as the ancient world's middlemen, the ones who knew how to turn a profit from the delicate art of glass. These traders would carry Egyptian glass across the Mediterranean, bartering it for exotic goods and spreading its fame far and wide. From Mesopotamia to the Aegean, Egyptian glass was a hot commodity, a diplomatic tool that opened doors in foreign courts. But let's not forget the pharaohs, the original power brokers of this glassy empire. The state controlled the production and distribution of glass with an iron grip, ensuring that the best pieces remained within the sacred walls of the palace or temple. It was a shrewd move, ensuring that the pharaohs remained the ultimate influencers, their status untouchable. By controlling glass, they controlled the narrative, a visual reminder of their divine right to rule. Now, here's where things get even more fascinating. Despite being a luxury item, glass played a role in the broader economy. It wasn't just a pretty face, it was an economic force. The production and trade of glass provided jobs and stimulated local economies. It was a ripple effect. The demand for glass meant more work for miners, labourers and traders. It was capitalism in its infancy, a system where everyone from the lowliest miner to the wealthiest merchant played a part, even if the rewards were unevenly distributed. And let's talk about those workers for a moment. While glass itself was a symbol of opulence, the conditions under which it was made were anything but luxurious. The workshops, often located near royal estates, were hotbeds of activity, and not just because of the furnaces. The workers toiled in sweltering heat with little to no safety measures. It was a hard-knock life, and yet, for many, it was a living, a chance to be part of something bigger than themselves, even if that something didn't always pay the bills. The romanticized vision of ancient Egyptian crafts as egalitarian pursuits is as enduring as it is inaccurate. The reality was a lot more like a pyramid scheme, with wealth trickling up rather than down. The artisans were at the bottom of this triangle, crafting the treasures that would grace the homes and temples of the elite. The myth of the egalitarian craft community is just that, a myth. The truth is, glassmaking was as hierarchical as the society it served, with a clear divide between the haves and the have-nots. But why did glass hold such allure? Beyond its beauty, glass was imbued with symbolism. To the Egyptians, it was more than just a material, it was magic in solid form. Glass was associated with rebirth and immortality, ideas central to Egyptian religion. Its ability to be melted down and reformed mirrored the eternal cycle of life, death, and rebirth, a comforting thought for those facing the uncertainties of the afterlife. It was this blend of practicality and spirituality that made glass such a prized possession, a material that transcended its physical properties to become a conduit for divine connection. In the end, the story of ancient Egyptian glassmaking is one of contrasts, a tale of dazzling beauty and harsh realities, of economic power and social inequality. It's a reminder that behind every shimmering artifact lies a complex web of human ambition, creativity, and desire. As we continue our journey through the sands of time, remember that the true magic of history isn't just in the objects it leaves behind, but in the stories we uncover beneath the surface. And trust me, there are plenty more stories to tell. So stick around as we delve deeper into the glassy depths of Egyptian history, where more revelations await. As we venture deeper into the tale of ancient Egyptian glassmaking, let's grab our metaphorical magnifying glasses and follow the trail of glass beads and amulets as they journeyed beyond the sun-drenched valleys of the Nile. It's time to see how these shimmering relics became the ancient world's version of a viral sensation, spanning from Mesopotamia to the Mediterranean. You see, the trade routes of the ancient world were like the Silk Road's older, slightly rough around the edges cousin, filled with sand, sea, and enough economic intrigue to make a Wall Street banker break a sweat. First, let's talk logistics. The Egyptians were no strangers to the concept of supply chains, and they managed to spread their glassware far and wide. Picture this. From their workshops, glass goods were loaded onto wooden boats that navigated the Nile, eventually reaching the bustling ports along the Mediterranean coast. Once there, these treasures were shipped off to far-flung lands. It was a journey of hundreds, sometimes thousands, of miles, a trek that would test the endurance of any ancient merchant. We're talking about a time when a good tailwind wasn't just a nice bonus, it was the difference between a successful venture and financial ruin. Now, the Mediterranean wasn't just a pretty blue backdrop for this trade, it was the beating heart of commerce, a liquid highway connecting civilizations. Egyptian glass found its way to the opulent courts of Mycenaean Greece and the vibrant cities of the Levant, where it was bartered for luxury goods like lapis lazuli and cedarwood. This wasn't merely a swap meet for high society, these were transactions that could redefine alliances and shift the balance of power. Glass wasn't just a commodity, it was a conversation starter in the diplomatic dance of antiquity. And speaking of diplomatic dances, let's not gloss over the economics of it all. Imagine a world where your trade success depended not just on having the right goods, but on navigating a labyrinth of tariffs and taxes that would give even the most seasoned CPA nightmares. The Egyptians had to deal with the whims of every local ruler whose territory they crossed, each demanding their cut of the profits. It was a high-stakes game of chess, where a misstep could cost you more than just a few shiny trinkets. Here's a fun fact. The glass trade wasn't just a one-way street. While Egyptian glass was making its way out, foreign influences were seeping in, impacting local production techniques. Archaeological finds suggest that by the late Bronze Age, Egypt wasn't just an exporter, but also a cultural sponge, absorbing styles and ideas from the lands they traded with. It's a testament to the interconnectedness of ancient cultures, a melting pot of innovations that echoes our globalized world today. But let's not romanticize this trade network too much. It wasn't all sunshine and smooth sailing. Pirates, storms, and the occasional unfriendly port could turn a profitable voyage into a financial fiasco faster than you can say sunk cost. Merchants had to be equal parts entrepreneur and adventurer, risking life and limb for a piece of the glass action. The stakes were high, and the margins razor-thin. One shipwreck could mean the end of a business, a reality as harsh as the desert sun. Despite these challenges, Egyptian glass remained in high demand, not just for its aesthetic appeal, but for its symbolic value. To own a piece of Egyptian glass was to possess a slice of the divine, a tangible connection to a civilization that was seen as the epitome of sophistication and power. It was a status symbol par excellence, a way for the elites of other cultures to signal their wealth and taste. This wasn't just trade, it was cultural diplomacy, a way for Egypt to project its influence far beyond its borders. Now, let's get into the nitty-gritty of how this trade influenced local economies. The demand for Egyptian glass spurred a flurry of activity across the Mediterranean, with local artisans trying to replicate the style and techniques of their Egyptian counterparts. This wasn't just flattery, it was a business strategy. By producing their own glass, these regions could cut down on import costs and increase their self-sufficiency. It was an early form of economic protectionism, a way to keep the wealth generated by the glass trade within local borders. And what of the artisans back in Egypt? For them, the booming trade meant job security and a steady demand for their skills. But let's not kid ourselves. these weren't cushy positions. The life of a glassmaker was hard, and the rewards were often limited to pride in craftsmanship rather than financial gain. The real winners of this trade boom were the merchants and the state, which pocketed the lion's share of the profits. It's a classic case of the rich getting richer, a tale as old as time and as relevant today as it was then. In the grand scheme of things, the Egyptian glass trade was more than just a commercial enterprise. It was a cultural phenomenon. It was a testament to the power of human ingenuity and the allure of beauty, a reminder that even in a world without modern technology, people were driven by the same desires and ambitions that fuel us today. And while the trade routes have long since faded into history, the legacy of Egyptian glass endures, a shining example of how a simple craft can shape the course of civilizations. So, as we prepare to explore the next chapter of this glittering saga, remember that history is more than just a series of dates and events. It's a living, breathing tapestry woven from the stories of those who dared to dream, to create, and to connect. And in the world of ancient Egyptian glass, those stories are as vibrant and colourful as the treasures they left behind. Stay tuned, because the journey's not over yet. We've still got plenty of ground to cover and secrets to uncover. Let's dive back into the shimmering tale of Egyptian glass, where the past and present are as intertwined as a cat's cradle in a toddler's hands. The legacy of Egyptian glassmaking didn't just fade into the sands of time, but instead cast a long, colourful shadow that reached far beyond the Nile. Picture this. As the centuries rolled on, those vibrant glass artifacts didn't just sit pretty in dusty museum cases. They sparked something, a cultural wildfire that leapt across time and geography, inspiring artisans from Rome to the Renaissance. Fast forward several centuries to the Roman Empire, a sprawling juggernaut that snatched up good ideas like a magpie collects shiny objects. The Romans saw Egyptian glass and thought, why not us too? They revolutionized glass production with a little innovation called glass blowing. Think of it as the Instagram filter of ancient crafts. This technique, which emerged around the 1st century BCE, allowed for faster production and more intricate designs. Glass became more accessible, but let's not kid ourselves. It wasn't exactly the Tupperware of its time. It was still a luxury, but now one that could be mass-produced. The Romans turned glass into a cornerstone of their material culture, using it not just for cups and vases, but also for windows, which brought a touch of transparency to a world often obscured by fabric and wood. Despite this leap, it took a while for glass to really hit its stride. It wasn't until the Renaissance around the 15th century that glassmaking truly blossomed into a full-blown art form. Venice became the epicenter of this glass revolution, particularly the island of Murano. Venetian glassmakers were the rock stars of their day, crafting pieces so exquisite they could make a grown Medici weep. These artisans pushed the boundaries of what glass could do, creating delicate masterpieces that were as much about status as about function. Meanwhile, the rest of Europe caught glass fever, and soon glass was everywhere, from churches to chandeliers. But let's pause and ask the big question, why didn't glassmaking take over the world right out of the Egyptian gates? Well, turns out the answer's as clear as, well, glass. The raw materials needed for glass production, like high-quality sand and alkalis, weren't just lying around like a buffet spread. Add to that the technical know-how required to keep a furnace hot enough to melt sand, but not your eyebrows, and you've got yourself a craft that's high maintenance, to say the least. Plus, glass is fragile. In a world where durability often trumped beauty, pottery and metal were the workhorses, while glass remained the show pony. Yet, the allure of glass never really diminished. It was like the elusive celebrity crush of the ancient world, always just out of reach, but irresistible. This is perhaps why glass has continued to capture our imagination even today. From the eyeglasses perched on your nose to the skyscraper windows reflecting city lights, glass is everywhere, a testament to its enduring appeal. But before we get too misty-eyed, let's dispel a few myths. Ancient glassmakers weren't mystical wizards waving magic wands. They were skilled labourers sweating it out in brutal conditions. As romantic as it sounds to imagine a lone artisan lovingly crafting each piece, the reality was a bit more industrial. The production of glass was a labour-intensive, team-based operation, more assembly line than artist studio. And while the final products were often stunning, the process to get there was anything but glamorous. So, What's the takeaway from this glittering journey through history? Simply put, the story of Egyptian glass is a vivid reminder that human creativity knows no bounds. It's a tale of how a material so fragile and demanding became a symbol of luxury and innovation, influencing cultures and industries across millennia. It also teaches us that the myths we build around historical crafts are often just that, myths. The reality is usually more complex, a tapestry of ambition, sweat, and, yes, a fair bit of luck. In the end, if there's one thing to remember, it's that the legacy of Egyptian glassmaking isn't just about the objects themselves, but about the human spirit behind them. It's a tribute to those who dared to see the potential in sand and fire, who understood that beauty and utility didn't have to be mutually exclusive. As you sip from your glass tumbler or admire a stained glass window, think of the ancient Egyptians who, thousands of years ago, turned silica and natron into something that still captures our hearts and imaginations today. Who knew that a bit of melted sand could leave such a lasting mark on history? The sun peeks over the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of orange and pink, and as much as you'd like to revel in the beauty of a new day, the crack of dawn means it's time to get moving. You're a farmer in the Qin Dynasty, and while the rest of the world might be sleeping in, you've got fields to tend. The agricultural calendar is your gospel, and today it's whispering a reminder that timing is everything. You shuffle out of your modest dwelling, feet touching the cool earth, ready to embrace the day's demands. Your life is dictated by the seasons, and this isn't just a poetic notion, it's a cold, hard fact. The Qin agrarian reforms have ensured that your existence is intertwined with the land more than ever. It's a relationship of necessity, not romance. As you prepare your breakfast, a humble bowl of steamed millet, you can't help but reflect on how this simple grain is the backbone of your diet and your livelihood. A far cry from the feast-worthy rice you've heard about over in the Yangtze Valley, millet is the staple here. It's cheap, it's filling, and in the grand scheme of things, it keeps you going. There's no time to linger over breakfast, though. The fields await, and so do the ever-watchful eyes of local officials. These guys are here to make sure you're following the latest agricultural reforms laid down by the state. They've got a job to do, and so do you. The Qin Dynasty, under the rule of the formidable Qin Shi Huang, is all about efficiency and control, and that extends right down to your plot of land. Now, let's talk tools. The iron plough is your trusty companion, and believe it or not, it's a game changer. Before this bad boy came along, farmers like you were stuck with wooden ploughs that were about as effective as using a spoon to dig a trench. Iron ploughs have revolutionized farming, making it possible to till the land more deeply and efficiently. But don't get too sentimental about it. This isn't just about making your life easier. The state is keen on ensuring that every inch of arable land is productive. More crops mean more resources for the state's ambitious projects, like that great wall they're building up north. As you work the land, it's impossible to ignore the sense of urgency that hangs in the air. The Qin Dynasty is a powerhouse of innovation, but it's also a pressure cooker of expectations. It's not just about growing enough to feed your family, it's about meeting quotas and contributing to the state's grand vision. And oh, what a vision it is! Unification, standardization, and centralization are the buzzwords of the day. These aren't just lofty ideals, they're the new rules of the game. Your morning is spent under the watchful gaze of the sun, and of course those local officials. They're not exactly the friendly neighborhood types. Their job is to ensure compliance, and they take it seriously. They stroll through the fields with an air of authority, clipboards in hand, or whatever the Qin equivalent was, ready to note down any deviations from the plan. It's a delicate dance, balancing your needs with those of the state. But let's not paint this as a one-sided story. Sure, the reforms are stringent, but they also bring about a degree of stability. The Qin dynasty is no stranger to turmoil, and these agricultural reforms are part of a bigger effort to create a cohesive and strong state. You might grumble about the oversight, but there's a certain security in knowing that the state has got a plan, even if it's a bit heavy-handed. So, you plough on. Literally. Your hands work the iron plough, your feet tread the familiar paths of your field, and your mind drifts between thoughts of the harvest and the possibility of a better future. The rhythm of your morning is a symphony of labour, punctuated by the occasional grunt of exertion and the ever-present chirping of birds. As the sun climbs higher in the sky, the morning gives way to the promise of a productive day. You've got your work cut out for you, but in the grand tapestry of history, you're not just a farmer, you're a part of the mighty Qin dynasty's narrative. And that, my friend, is something worth pondering as you take a brief pause to wipe the sweat from your brow, feeling the weight of both the plough and history in your hands. And just like that, as midday creeps in, you're reminded that in the Qin dynasty, lunch isn't a leisurely affair. It's more of a pit stop in the marathon that is your daily grind. But before you can even think about that next bowl of millet, let's dive into the nitty-gritty of the economic system that keeps you tethered to this life. A system as rigid as the Great Wall is long, well, eventually. First up, taxes. If you thought modern taxes were a headache, try living under Qin Shi Huang. The taxman in 3rd century BC, China doesn't mess around. Your tax burden is heavier than your neighbor's ox, with levies on land, labor, and even household items. You're expected to cough up a portion of your harvest, which means every grain of millet has a target on its back. The state takes its cut before you even get a taste. It's a bit like ordering a pizza and having someone else eat the first slice. Fair? Not so much. But hey, it funds the emperor's grand project, so that's something, right? Now, let's talk about standardization, the Qin dynasty's favorite buzzword. We're all about making things simple, or so they say. Weights, measures, and even currency are getting the one-size-fits-all treatment. Sounds efficient? Sure, but it's also about as forgiving as a stone statue. Imagine your life being measured and weighed with the precision of a carpenter's ruler. Everything from your tools to your taxes is scrutinized under the same rigid system. It's like the world's least fun game of Tetris, where one wrong move could mean game over. Speaking of precision, this standardization was a logistical marvel, but also a straitjacket. The Qin dynasty introduced the banliang coin, a round copper piece with a square hole that was supposed to make trade easier. Handy, right? Except when you realize that a farmer like you doesn't see much of it. Most of your transactions are still in barter, exchanging millet for tools or labor. The shiny coins are more likely to line the pockets of merchants and officials. In essence, it's like being in a world where everyone's talking about the latest iPhone, but you're still using a rotary dial. And let's not forget the law, the unyielding backbone of Qin political might. Legalism is the name of the game, and it's a doctrine with all the warmth of a winter breeze. The law here isn't just strict, it's an iron-fisted overlord. Steal a chicken? Prepare for a punishment that's as merciless as it is swift. The penalties are harsh, designed to keep you and your fellow farmers in line. It's a constant reminder that while you're tilling the land, the state is tilling your life. But before you start thinking it's all doom and gloom, let's throw in a dash of irony. The Great Wall, that iconic symbol of Chinese strength and ingenuity, is supposed to be your shield against northern invaders. Here's the kicker. It's still under construction, and many of those bricks are laid by fellow farmers conscripted into labor. Talk about building a wall to keep out problems when you've got enough on your plate already. As you wipe the sweat from your brow, pondering these existential quandaries, you can't help but chuckle at the absurdity. You're part of a system that's building a legacy, one brick at a time, yet it feels like your own legacy is being measured in bushels of millet. The grand narrative of unification and progress is both a promise and a burden, and you're carrying it on your shoulders every day. While the afternoon sun blazes, your thoughts drift to the tales of other regions. You've heard whispers of the Yangtze Valley, where rice paddies stretch like a green sea. There, farmers might be dealing with their own headaches, but at least they have a crop that's the envy of the empire. It's a reminder that while the Qin dynasty's reach is vast, life's fortunes are as varied as the landscapes they encompass. So, as you stand in your field, knee-deep in the weight of history and millet, you keep going. Because what else can you do? You're part of a machine bigger than yourself, a cog in the grand design of an empire that's both awe-inspiring and terrifying. And while the Great Wall might be a work in progress, so is your place in this ever-evolving tapestry. With the sun high overhead, casting its relentless gaze upon your world, you take a deep breath. The afternoon's tasks await, and with them the promise of another day in the life of a Qin dynasty farmer. Because in the end, history is just a collection of these everyday moments, sweat, toil, and the faint hope that maybe, just maybe, all of this leads somewhere worth the journey. And as you stand there, knees deep in millet and existential musings, let's take a detour into your village's social fabric, the tangled web that keeps this Qin dynasty adventure from unraveling. Life here isn't just about farming. It's a grand social experiment in legalism, where every person has their place, and straying from it could mean trouble. The Qin dynasty, under the iron grip of Qin Shi Huang, isn't just a political entity, it's a well-oiled machine fueled by a strict hierarchy, and you're a cog in it. At the top of the food chain, you've got the emperor whose word is law, literally. Below him are the high-ranking officials, then the local magistrates, and finally, people like you, the farmers and labourers who do the heavy lifting. It's a bit like a human pyramid, except the guy at the top isn't exactly holding you up, you're doing all the heavy lifting. Legalism, the ruling philosophy, is the Qin's not-so-secret sauce. Developed by Han Feizi, it's all about strict laws and severe punishments, a zero-tolerance policy long before the term was cool. Picture this, you're caught stealing a chicken. The punishment? Not a slap on the wrist, but possibly losing the hand that committed the crime. The logic is simple. Harsh penalties deter bad behaviour. The reality, though, is a village where everyone's just a bit on edge, constantly looking over their shoulders. But hey, at least there's no shortage of entertainment gossip, that is. When your life is under constant surveillance and the law hangs over your head like a storm cloud, talking about your neighbour's latest misstep is practically a pastime. Did you hear about Lao Jiang's son getting caught slacking off during conscripted labour? The officials made an example out of him, and now he's the cautionary tale of the month. It's like your own version of a soap opera, minus the commercial breaks. And speaking of cautionary tales, let's not forget the infamous book burnings. In 213 BC, Qin Shi Huang decided philosophical debates were about as welcome as a drought. So he ordered a purge of texts that didn't align with legalist ideals. The great bonfire of knowledge was meant to eliminate dissent and ensure that everyone sang from the same hymnal. But here's the twist. While the idea of torching books is horrifying, it's also oddly romanticized. The image of flames licking at scrolls as scholars weep is the stuff of legends, even if the reality was a bit more bureaucratic than cinematic. These burnings were less about fire and brimstone and more about control. The Qin wanted a monopoly on thought, and the easiest way to achieve that was by eliminating competition. It's like a game of Monopoly where you own all the properties, but instead of hotels, you've got a monopoly on ideas. Sure, it sounds efficient, but it's also like playing chess against a grandmaster who's already rigged the board. Back in your village, these policies trickle down like rain in a leaky roof. The laws are clear, the hierarchy is rigid, and the penalties are severe. You've got officials making rounds, ensuring compliance like hall monitors on a power trip. The local magistrate, a man who's got all the charm of a tax audit, is the enforcer of these laws. His presence is a reminder that the state is always watching, and any deviation from the norm is met with swift correction. But don't let the legal straitjacket fool you into thinking life is all doom and gloom. The social fabric is more than just rules and repercussions. It's also about community, shared hardships, and the odd moment of levity. There's a camaraderie among your fellow villagers, a bond forged in the fires of collective toil. You might not be able to discuss banned philosophies, but there's always room for a joke about the local magistrate's new haircut or the latest scandal involving someone's chickens. And then there's the unspoken understanding that while the Qin dynasty is a machine, it's made up of people, imperfect, flawed, and wonderfully human. Sure, the laws are strict, but they're enforced by people who have their own quirks and biases. It's a system that's as human as it is harsh, where personal relationships can sometimes smooth the rough edges of legalism. As the afternoon sun begins its descent, casting long shadows across the fields, you continue your work, aware of the world beyond your plot of land. The whispers of far-off places, tales of other regions where rice paddies thrive and life is different, linger in your mind. The Qin dynasty may have unified China, but it hasn't erased the diversity of experiences within its borders. And so you plough on, a farmer in a grand empire, caught between the weight of history and the pull of everyday life. The village around you is a microcosm of the Qin's ambitions and its contradictions, a place where the rigidity of law meets the fluidity of human nature. It's a delicate balance, a dance between control and chaos, and you're right in the middle of it. As the day winds down and the village settles into the evening rhythm, you pause to reflect on your place in this grand tapestry. You're more than just a farmer. You're a witness to history, a participant in a story that's still being written. And while the Qin dynasty's legacy looms large, your own story is one of resilience, adaptation, and the everyday triumphs of life under an empire that's as awe-inspiring as it is oppressive. And with that, the sun dips below the horizon, taking with it the harsh light of day and leaving you with the soft glow of dusk. The work is done, for now, and tomorrow will bring its own challenges and revelations. But tonight, as you lay your head down, you're part of something bigger, a narrative that stretches beyond the confines of your village and into the annals of history. Here's to another day in the life of a Qin dynasty farmer, where every moment is a brushstroke on the canvas of time. As dusk settles over the Qin landscape, the world around you transforms into a tapestry of shadows and whispers. The day's labor is done. But before you can fully surrender to the embrace of an evening meal, there's another chapter of your life that demands attention. It's time to talk infrastructure, the grand, sweeping gestures of an empire that promised unity and progress, but delivered it on the backs of farmers like you. Let's start with those famous Qin roads. Stretching over 4,000 miles, the roads are a marvel of ancient engineering. They're the superhighways of the 3rd century BC, designed to move armies and goods with the efficiency of a Roman legion. But before you romanticize these thoroughfares as symbols of progress, take a moment to consider the foot soldiers of this grand design, you and your fellow villagers. Conscripted labor is the name of the game, and participation is not optional. Picture this. You're pulled from your fields, your hands still stained with the earth, and thrust into a workforce that spans the empire. The road you're building isn't just a path for traders and soldiers. It's a lifeline for the state, and you're the one laying the bricks. Of course, it's hard not to see the irony. Here you are, toiling away to create a system that connects the empire, yet each step you take also tightens the regime's grip on your daily existence. It's a bit like digging your own moat, useful for keeping the barbarians out, but it also keeps you in. The roads are dual purpose, facilitating trade and military maneuvers while ensuring the state can reach you with the speed of a swift-footed messenger. And let's not gloss over the labor conditions. You're not just a cog in the machine, you're the grease that keeps it running. Long hours, minimal food, and the ever-present gaze of overseers ensure that the state gets its pound of flesh. And then there are the canals. The Jingguo Canal, over 150 miles long, is a feat that even modern engineers would applaud. Its purpose? To irrigate the arid lands of the north, turning barren soil into fertile ground. On paper, it's a stroke of genius, a way to boost agricultural output and sustain a growing population. But who's doing the digging? You guessed it. Your hands, already calloused from the plough, now grip a shovel as you and your neighbours carve out waterways that promise prosperity but come at a cost. These projects are more than just impressive feats of engineering. They're a testament to the Qin's unyielding quest for control. The canals and roads are arteries, pulsing with the lifeblood of an empire determined to knit its territories into a seamless whole. They symbolize unity, sure, but unity achieved through sheer willpower and the sweat of countless laborers. It's hard not to admire the vision, but it's equally hard to ignore the human toll. Let's take a moment to debunk a few myths, shall we? The romantic notion of these projects as purely benevolent endeavors is as shaky as the scaffolding on an unfinished bridge. The vision of a unified China, with roads and canals crisscrossing like a well-ordered quilt, is undeniably alluring. But the reality is that these projects were about as gentle as a bull in a china shop. The state's relentless push for progress often left individuals trampled in its wake. And while the roads and canals are meant to bind the empire, they also serve another purpose: surveillance. The ease of movement they provide isn't just for traders and armies, it's for officials too. Those ever-watchful eyes can now traverse the empire with the speed of a galloping horse, ensuring that no corner of the Qin realm escapes its notice. It's a clever system, one that ensures compliance with state edicts while keeping potential rebellions in check. But let's not paint this as entirely bleak. The roads and canals do bring benefits. They facilitate trade, allowing goods to flow like water through the empire's veins. Markets flourish, economies grow, and the exchange of ideas is as vibrant as a spring festival. The state might have its own agenda, but there's no denying that these projects create opportunities too. It's the classic double-edged sword progress wrapped in the iron fist of control. As you stand on the cusp of evening, the world around you begins to quiet. The roads and canals, those mighty symbols of imperial ambition, stretch out into the gathering darkness. They are the threads that weave the empire together, but they are also reminders of the weight you bear, both the literal burden of labor and the metaphorical weight of history. The Qin dynasty might be building a legacy, but it's doing so on the shoulders of its people. And so, as the last light fades and you finally settle down to your evening meal, you're left to contemplate your place in this grand narrative. You're not just a farmer, you're a builder of roads and canals, a participant in the grand experiment that is the Qin dynasty. The empire's ambitions are vast, its reach is long, and its demands are unceasing. Yet, within this demanding framework, you find moments of connection, resilience, and even pride. The roads and canals are more than just infrastructure. They are monuments to human endeavour, both noble and flawed. They are the legacy of an empire that seeks to unify not just its lands, but its people. And as you take a moment to rest, knowing that tomorrow will bring new challenges and opportunities, you recognize that you are part of something larger, a story that's still unfolding, one step, one shovel, one day at a time. So here's to the roads you build, the canals you dig, and the future you help shape. Because in the end, history isn't just about the grand deeds of emperors and generals, it's about the everyday lives of people like you, whose hands carve the path that others will walk. And as the night envelops you in its embrace, you drift off to sleep, a farmer, a builder, a dreamer in the Qin dynasty's grand tapestry. As the night settles in, you reflect on the grand tapestry of the Qin dynasty, a narrative woven with ambition, control, and the relentless pursuit of unity. It's hard to ignore the irony, a dynasty that sought to last for eternity but barely managed to stick around for 15 years. It's the historical equivalent of planning a marathon and tripping over your shoelaces at the starting line. But oh, what a sprint it was, even if it ended with a faceplant. The Qin dynasty's legacy is a paradox wrapped in an enigma, coated in a hefty layer of bureaucracy. On one hand, it unified China, a feat that previous states had only dreamed of. The introduction of standardized weights, measures, and even the written script was like giving the empire a shared language, one that whispered efficiency and power. Yet this unity came at a steep price, often paid in the currency of individual freedom and, quite literally, the sweat off your back. Let's talk about the Great Wall for a second. Sure, it's an architectural marvel, stretching over 13,000 miles in its entirety, but its construction was less about keeping out invaders and more about showcasing a ruler's ambition. In reality, it was more of a psychological barrier than a physical one. The nomadic tribes it was supposed to deter often found ways around it, like a determined cat outsmarting a baby gate. Meanwhile, you and your fellow farmers were often dragged away from your fields to work on it, turning what was supposed to be a protective bulwark into a never-ending chore list. And speaking of chores, let's not forget the Qin's legal system. Legalism, to be precise. This philosophy was all about strict adherence to the law, with punishments that made a medieval dungeon look like a day spa. The idea was to create order through fear, a strategy that works about as well as herding cats with a leaf blower. Sure, it kept people in line, but it also stifled innovation and dissent, creating a society that was as rigid as it was brittle. The Qin might have been aiming for a harmonious society, but in practice it sometimes felt more like trying to play a violin with a crowbar. Now, let's address the elephant in the room, the infamous book burnings and scholar burials. In a move that would make any modern librarian weep, Qin Shi Huang decided to purge the empire of conflicting philosophies and histories, ensuring that legalism reigned supreme. It's this kind of heavy-handed censorship that gives dystopian novels their plotlines. But in the Qin's case, it was a reality where knowledge was not just controlled, but systematically snuffed out. Yet, this act of cultural vandalism is often overshadowed by the romanticized notion of a strong, unified China, a testament to the power of a good PR campaign and a short historical memory. Economic reform was another hallmark of the Qin legacy. By abolishing feudalism and introducing a centralized bureaucracy, the Qin laid the groundwork for future dynasties. The state could now collect taxes more efficiently, mobilize resources on an unprecedented scale, and implement reforms with the speed of a well-oiled machine. But this centralization also meant that when the top wobbled, the entire structure teetered. Like a Jenga tower with a shaky base, the Qin dynasty's downfall was swift and dramatic, a reminder that even the most meticulously planned systems are vulnerable to the chaos of human nature. Despite its short reign, the Qin dynasty set the stage for millennia of Chinese history. The Han dynasty, which followed, adopted many of its innovations while discarding its more draconian aspects, like a chef who keeps the recipe but dials back on the spices. The Qin's ambition for unity and standardization laid the foundation for what would eventually become one of the world's longest-lasting civilizations. But let's not sugarcoat it. This legacy was built on the backs of countless individuals whose stories were often overshadowed by the grand narrative. As you rest your weary head, you can't help but marvel at the Qin's audacity. It's a story of triumph and tragedy, a cautionary tale wrapped in the veneer of progress. The Qin dynasty's impact is undeniable, a lasting testament to what happens when ambition meets the complex realities of human society. It's a reminder that history is as much about the people who lived it as it is about the empires they built and the legacies they left behind. And so, as you drift into sleep, you reflect on your role in this grand saga. You're not just a farmer or a builder, you're a witness to history, a participant in a story that continues to unfold. The Qin dynasty might have aimed for eternal unity, but its true legacy lies in the lessons it left behind, a tapestry of human endeavour, resilience, and the ever-present hope for a better future. Here's to the twists and turns of history, where every ending is a new beginning, and the stories of the past continue to shape the world we live in today.